Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John Dehlin. It's January 21st, 2025. And today we are going to be having a guest who is talking about navigating neurodivergence. In this case, I'll call it high-functioning autism / ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Yeah, close enough, John.
Within the context of a high demand religion, and also within the context of a abusive relationship, how to self-advocate, and also sort of maybe achieving or obtaining some of these neurodivergent diagnoses as an adult later in life. And because I know it's really common, people now obtaining ADHD and or autism diagnoses as adults, and then reflecting back on maybe signs that people missed when they were young. But that's what we're going to be talking about today on Mormon Stories. Margie's here as co-host. Hey, Margie.
Hi there.
And our guest today is Paul Martinez.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, team. Thank you so much.
From the sun. Is Florida the Sunshine State? What's
Florida.
California?
There you go.
What's California?
California, Golden State.
Bear State, Golden State. All right. Well, anyway, Paul Martinez, welcome to Mormon Stories.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a real honor to be here.
Yeah, we're really glad to have you.
Yeah.
Also, you're a convert to the church.
I am a convert. I joined when I was 20 years old.
So that's another dynamic as well. There's also themes of divorce and, faith navigation and faith journey as well. Right?
That's right, John. Yeah, happy to share.
All right. So, Paul, normally we like to give everyone a chance to give kind of an intention why they wanted to do an interview on Mormon Stories. Do you want to take a minute to share your intention?
Absolutely, John. I've been thinking about this one. I have two intentions here, John. One is to heal. You know, putting words to the experience is so healing. You know, and I need it. I think everyone does. So one, talking about it, it just helps me process and move through. And two, John, is I would love to be another voice in the Mormon Stories choir. You know, Mormon Stories was so good to me. There was just phenomenal stories and ones that I really needed, you know, when I heard them. And I'd love to do, you know, the same for someone else. That would mean so much to me.
Beautiful. Well, we really appreciate you making the drive and coming to the studio. All right. So, Paul Martinez, where does your Mormon story begin? As I understand the outline, it doesn't start as a Mormon.
It does not. It doesn't, John. My Mormon story begins when I was very young. It starts with my family. You know, it starts with my parents. Okay, so my dad, back then, and I suspect now, was on the spectrum.
And when you say, there's going to be a lot of people that don't know about autism, don't know about ADHD, and even neurodivergence. So
absolutely, yeah, I'll speak to that. So let me speak to autism, ADHD, and kind of neurodivergence. So autism, simply put, we have, you know, deficiencies with our prefrontal cortex. We have difficulty with abstract thinking, breaking down complex tasks, some components of impulse control. A big part is deregulation. Deregulation, being able to control your emotions and curb them. You know, it's a big problem. It can be a really big problem. Social issues, you know, a lot of us who have autism, we just miss a lot of social cues, break boundaries, we interrupt, we overshare, and we're just not the best, you know, not the most eloquent. And ADHD, which I also have, John, two things is impulse control. It's a big deal. You know, we've all, you know, seen that 6 or 7 year old who has ADHD just running around, bouncing around the walls. And what's really happening is, I guess this is another part of ADHD, is we're seeking novelty. We're seeking stimulation. So it's not that we're overstimulated. We're actually understimulated, and we're desperately looking for it. So impulse control and seeking novelty, right? So tying that to neurodivergent. So neurodivergent is actually a relatively new term and one that I subscribe to. It speaks more to the idea that we're just a minority. We just happen to be a small part of the population. And if we were to flip it, and neurotypicals, we're the minority, like you guys would be the crazy ones, right? In that you never say what you mean. You don't mean what you say. You're indirect with your speech. You're staring at us with your eyeballs all day. You're planning for things years ahead, like when plans might change at any time, right? So it's really that we're just a minority here, John, right? And this world was just not built for us. I have to say some really despise that label because it denies the trauma that a lot of neurodivergent people experience. Okay, it can be really hard to just fill out paperwork, John, when you have ADHD, because it's so boring, right? People fall behind, fall late, or fall behind on payments because it's so boring to create that login, remember the password. Oh, I forgot it. Got to reset it. I don't want to do this. And then you run off and do something more exciting. So it can be really traumatic, and a lot of people fall behind. Okay, it can be really hard. And people who are neurodivergent, we're more likely to fall victim to predators and abusive people. I think it's 10 to 12 times more. We're more likely to be abused, and fewer people help us. We just don't have the kind of political prowess and power that other populations have. So I'm sympathetic to that. But I identify as neurodivergent. I just like to think I'm a little different, John. And if you work with me, I'll work with you. So that being said, and kind of tying it back to my dad. So my dad, definitely on the spectrum, definitely ADHD. Never got a diagnosis, but he had issues with deregulation. When my dad would get mad, he would get mad, and it would be sudden. I'd spill a drink at the dinner table. And homeboy was, getting up from his chair, and he was pissed, right? He was physical, and that was just his way of handling the situation. It was quick, it was easy, and it got things done, okay? He was also really hard to work with. Like when I needed my dad to help me out with, getting school stuff, he would forget, he'd get the wrong thing, and it was a disaster. Right. So I didn't get the guidance, I was really hoping for, and I was taught from an early age that you obey, you listen, you obey, you do what dad says, and you stay out of trouble. Mm-hmm. You learn to fawn. That was my survival, technique. I fawned, whatever you want, Dad, here you go. Yes, Dad, here it is. And I'll stay out of your way. And you do that to survive. Right. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have direction, as a youth, 8, 9 years old, walking through the streets of Santa Monica, no curfew. Sometimes I wouldn't even come home. And the next day I'd walk through those doors. Dad wouldn't even ask where I was. There was just no real relationship there. My mom, I had great memories of my mom growing up. But unfortunately, there was a divorce and someone needed to prevail. It was a really contentious divorce. And my mind was poisoned as a child. And I was conditioned to hate my mom. Okay, so I threw my mom under the bus. But deep down, John, I loved my mom. I loved her. And I hated myself for that. I was so young.
For being influenced with the parental alienation.
Yeah, that I didn't stand up for myself. I was so young. How could I have?
Yeah, right.
But I did it. I threw my own mom under the bus. Dad wins the custody deal. And eventually I started to believe the lies, about my mom, that, I was a welfare baby. She never loved you. You don't want to be with her. And, I was conditioned to think I was unlovable. Like if your own mom, doesn't love you, something's wrong with you, right? So I'm young, I'm a kiddo. We're egocentric as children. Everything's about us. And a big part of neurodivergence is we do that too. Everything's our fault. We just don't understand that caretakers sometimes make mistakes. We suffer from really simplistic, naive, black and white thinking sometimes. And breaking that kind of simple mindset, we just can't do it. Not unless we're get a lot of therapy and break it. We have very rigid mindsets. So I didn't have a family, John, for all intents and purposes. Very contentious. My father was a recluse. I didn't see other family growing up. And isolated, very alone. I was awkward, autism, I was overweight, impulse control, ate a lot of food, and I paid the price with friends, awkward. I was up, Mexican kid in West LA, Santa Monica, and working class. So I stood out, not much in the way of friends, and, no community, no leadership, and I was so alone.
Sounds like the perfect candidate for Mormon missionaries.
Yeah, that's
no, I'm not
true.
trying to rush the story, but I mean, oftentimes vulnerable people are or lonely people or isolated people are most interested in the gospel message.
I also see, honestly, with your childhood, just so a great deal of stress for a child, and I'm guessing because of that, just you're honestly coming up with coping as a child with very limited resources. And so when we talk about fawning, or we talk about, how you learn to stay safe as a child, it's literally just whatever a child can grab for safety. But one of the tragic things about that is that your sense of self, right? Like that development of who you are, or oftentimes is the thing that gets neglected. Would you say that was true for you, that you're so busy trying to just stay safe in a moment that, Paul as a boy maybe had limited, opportunity to explore and to kind of get this sense for who you are?
Absolutely. I mean, your needs get in the way, right? You're bothering Dad at this point. He needs to relax. He just came back from a hard day's work, or he's upset, or I'm scared of upsetting him, right? So I would only reach out when I really needed to reach out.
Yeah.
And I just learned, he's just not a resource for you in this life. Just don't rely on him. It's only going to hurt you.
And the other thing I was just going to ask you about is oftentimes when you grow up as a child where your home isn't safe, other places can be places of safety, right? A child looks wherever they can, and sometimes that would be friendship, sometimes that would be, sports, sometimes that would be school. But what you're describing is that likely maybe some of those places were also hard for you. So was that true? And was that further isolating this, or were there places of safety for you?
Yeah. I tried to fit in. I tried to make friends, but I didn't have a cool place. Hey, friend, can you come over, check out my Nintendo 64 or whatever? It's I didn't have that stuff. And I would feel so self-conscious going to other people's houses, They're for starters, they were houses, stairs leading up to them, 2 stories going up, a set of stairs. No, and I was really uncomfortable. The autism might have also played a role in that, novel situations can be really stressful, right? And the few times I would visit, I wasn't terribly polite. I didn't do all the pleasantries, either I wasn't taught them, or I just didn't see them. I missed the cues. And so I wouldn't be invited back. In high school, I did have one really meaningful relationship, and it carried me through. She too had been abused, and there was trauma bonding. It brought us together, and that carried me through for a bit. We both needed it. Yeah, that was a game changer. And we had a small group of friends, and we were all a little oddball, but it was what I needed then. Yeah, I definitely did not have a large community, to fall on. Family was off limits. If I talked to the family, then I'm betraying Dad. So, it was hard. I look back, and those were tough times. I feel so bad for that little kid.
Yeah. So
how did, is the church coming into your life the next part of the story, or is there something else before the church?
Yeah. We can go to this.
Were you religious at all, or before joining the Mormon LDS Church?
Not really. My family, Hispanic, somehow missed the Catholic missionaries, and they were evangelical. And, I attended a couple times, but, I was young. It didn't really resonate, and it was not a big part of our life. So I didn't feel the pressure to go either. come high school, I was a self-proclaimed atheist. I just said, hey, there's no way there's a God. Tell me how all these things can be, and, have homeboy God just watch over it. Like, I don't buy it. Huh. Yeah.
What were you interested in? What were your interests in high school?
Yeah, special interest. Thank you for bringing that up. I love skating. Skating actually was really good. Physical exercise. Yeah, skateboarding.
Oh, yeah.
That was great for me. 3-4 hours a day I was skating, and that kept me going as well physically. Yeah, that was really good. Chess, another special interest I had.
Yeah.
That gal I met, I needed to beat her dad. I needed to win him over. And we played chess. He beats me the first time. And I'm like, I got to beat this guy. And I started studying, and I fell in love with it. I loved history from your 1830s romantic period and all the openings back then to your classical, romantic, to your classical, to your hyper-modern chess theory and opening theory. And I would study that too. I love to learn. School, I did really well in school. Wow. That was also something that really saved me. I was great with book smarts, reading and comprehension. I just loved doing it.
Yeah.
So school was great. I did really well. High school, I took senior year, 5 AP classes, de facto college. And I was proud of that.
Tell me if that's a potentially feature of both ADHD and high-functioning autism, the ability to kind of drill deep learning-wise.
Yeah, that's a great question, John. There is a bit of a paradox with ADHD and high-functioning autism. Historically, if you have ADHD, you do terribly in school. You do have a really terrible time. It's tough to just sit there and watch a person write on a board and talk. I remember just tuning him out and thinking, I will follow up later. I'll talk to him after school. I'll check it out on the internet. But if you do have an interest, it is your thing. You're doing it every day. Same with autism. Your special interests. Everyone has an autistic friend or cousin who just loves Pokemon or trains or horror films, and they know all the facts and all the things. So it depends. If you have both autism, ADHD, it is a bit of a paradox in that ADHD, you want novelty. So it doesn't make sense that you're studying the same thing 4 hours a day. And autism says, I want routine. I want structure. Oh. Give it to me. If you're on the spectrum, you're always wondering, what's next? What are we doing? Where are we going to go eat? Has the menu changed? Are we going to park in the same spot? Are we going to sit at the same table? And with me, it manifests itself in this way. So I have both, is that I need structure in that from 2 to 5 p.m., I'm adulting. I'm doing, I call it, executive time, where I'm filling out paperwork. I'm doing work, doing invoices. But the thing I'm doing might change within those from 2 to 5. So maybe I'll do this project. And then, from 5 to 6, I'm cooking food. But I might cook a different meal. But I need that meal from 5 to 6. If it's 6:10, it worries me. I get anxious. The food doesn't taste as good. And it starts to throw off my day. So there's structure, but there's novelty within that structure as well. So chess, same thing. Every chess game is different, but the pieces move the same every time.
Got it. Okay, so a really good student and loved to skateboard and play chess.
Yeah. I would ask one maybe final question just to lay a foundation for what's to come. What would you say your foundation for your experience of love? And I'm going to say this in quotation marks, love, because we're going to talk about just your concept of love based on your childhood and your family system.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
What was that like? What did you learn?
Yeah, love, emotions. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, this is actually a big part of it. Autism, alexithymia. Alexithymia is it's a part of autism, and it's difficulty comprehending and experiencing emotions. Right? We have them, but sometimes we have a flat affect, and we don't express them well. We either don't express them well, or 2, we don't understand what's happening. We might be able to tell that it's good where it's bad. But if it's a grief, if it's, we ate something, we ate some food that maybe made us sick. If we hear something upsetting, we get upset. We might not even really tell we're upset, but others can. And so we're a little removed from emotions. So one, detecting them can be really hard. And then two, we can have really big emotions as well. That's where the ADHD comes in. We can have really big emotions. We can go from 0 to 100 in a snap. If something doesn't exactly go our way, a routine is broken. And my experiences taught me that I just wasn't lovable. And I would punish myself, truth be told. I did not self-mutilate, but I would torture myself at night with terrible thoughts about myself, okay? And I felt like I deserved it. Mom doesn't love you. Look at your dad. Look at what's happening with all these things in your life. You deserve this. And it felt good when I felt bad, okay?
I've never thought about rumination and self-hatred as self-harm, but but that, just like OCD can have physical rituals, but also mental rituals that serve the function of compulsions. I never thought about self-harm having a purely mental component.
Yeah, no,
That's
John,
fascinating.
it was real. It was so real, and it was for years, right? It would be made worse. It was a stab in the heart every time because my parents divorced, and it was my sisters who would see my mom, stay with Dad. And my mom would drop them off, and I would see her card. I'd see her dropping them off, and I'd be like, man, I wish I could see her. I wish I could. But, I can't, It'll piss off Dad. And this is where the black and white thinking came in. I'd made a decision, even though I was a child. No, I made the decision and I'm sticking to it. I have to do it. But that was torture, to see her and to see her drive away. And to think, I wonder if she's thinking about me. And so it was for years, every night. And I would do it, John. And it would feel good when it would feel bad. Oh, this is, is working. It's doing what it's supposed to do right now.
Yeah.
It was terrible. But during the day, relatively okay. Great student, had a girlfriend. But I was tortured, deep down inside. Speaking to the love kind of component to it. Yeah, I did not feel worthy of love. And there were probably times where people tried to reach out, and I turned them down. I would turn them down. I didn't know why. Mm-hmm. It would feel like magnets with the same polarity. The moment there was any kind of affection, it's like, oh, I got to go. I don't feel comfortable with this. And it was hard. Yeah, those are really tough times. And that absolutely plays a role in my kind of my church experience. Absolutely.
And if we were going to have you describe your foundational relationships in life and what they felt like the descriptors of what those relationships felt like, because I think this does build an unconscious familiarity that comes in. How would you describe some of those descriptors with your, those kind of founding relationships to a child? What did they feel like? Stable versus volatile, or do you know what I mean?
I might not have even known what a relationship was, how to form them. I'm shocked I did as well as I did with my then girlfriend. We actually had a great relationship. We never deregulated in front of each other. We really cared about each other, and there was something where we just felt so safe. And I think it was the trauma we both endured. She endured something really difficult as a child, and she would self-harm as well. And I think that we were just genuinely both really hurt, and that brought us together. But with most relationships, the autism might have played a role. I'm not sure where they started and where they began. I'd show up to a classroom. I wouldn't greet people, maybe because I didn't know how. but maybe because I really didn't want to either. I just didn't really understand them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So when and how did you meet the missionaries?
Absolutely, John. So, did well in high school. Really proud of this. And first in my family to go to private university, University of Spoiled Children. Very proud of that in LA.
Wait,
USC.
what is that?
Yeah, USC.
You're a Trojan.
I am. I'm a Trojan.
Fight on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, fight on. You know, it's all my Trojan brothers out there.
Wait, so that's a big deal to grow up sort of lower SES, but to make it into USC, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And to be able to pay for it or to have scholarships.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is if someone had not intervened and told me, I would not have gone to USC. It was a math teacher, you know, and they saw like, hey, this kid's smart. And they knew a little bit about my family history. And he saw potential in me, you know. It's Mr. Okla. I still remember him. And I still remember, hey, call this number, 213, like 740, you know, quadruple zero, something like that. And I see missions office, like call them, and we'll tee you up for the paperwork. And again, like a lot of the colleges in their tiers, and one's better than the other, and this one will help you more with that. It just didn't really resonate with me. You know, it was not a part of my growing up. And yeah, no, he intervened. He saw the potential. Yeah, there have been key players in my life.
Wow.
Who, you know, they saw who he was, and they said to this kid, if we point him in the right direction, you know, he can do really good things. You know, and they did instill confidence in me. Like I needed these people. Mm-hmm. So he helped me out. You know, helped me out with the paperwork, and pointed us to financial aid, and I ended up getting a pretty great deal for USC. Pretty great deal.
Wow.
Okay, and then what comes next?
So absolutely. So my ADHD got in the way. I wound up in the wrong school, letters, arts, and sciences. I wanted architecture. Classic ADHD, filling things out wrong. So eventually I transferred to architecture, and I'm in studio. There are about 12 of us in studio. It's kind of like an art kind of environment, and there was one lady there, who she stood out. She seemed really wholesome and kind and genuine. I was always a good kid. I didn't do the debauchery stuff, so I stayed away from that as well. But, it's college. A lot of people are excited to be away and do stupid stuff and swear, and try to impress. But not her. She was just so sweet, and I'm like, I gotta get to know this person. Eventually we start working on a project together, and, final, it's probably due Monday, and we were working Sunday, and she's like, hey, I gotta go to church, can't show up till 1. And I'm like, okay, yeah, fine, whatever, we'll see you at 1. We start doing the work, and we started talking about, her church. Hey, well, tell me about this church. What's that all about? Oh, yeah, part of the Mormon church, and I had a lot of the cliche misconceptions about it. Amish. Thought these people were the Amish. I'm like, you don't look Amish. And she's like, no, we're not the Amish. We believe that in a restored church, that the church that Christ himself had once established is back on the earth. And we believe in this new set of scripture, Book of Mormon. And, it stood out to me. There was a logic to it that appealed to me. Like, all right, homeboy established a church, falls apart. It's got to come back. He worked with prophets, apostles. Okay, that makes sense. And this Book of Mormon. I'm like, all right, new scripture. Homeboy Jesus, he's in the Americas. Makes sense. Why would he just abandon, other people? It makes sense he'd go around and preach his gospel. And I say, hey, I want a copy of this book. Can you give it to me? And she says, sure, I'll give it to you. And a few days later, she hands me a copy, and it had her testimony in it. And her testimony, man, it resonated. I read it. It was her handwriting in front of the Book of Mormon. And I remember the Book of Mormon. I still have it. I still have that Book of Mormon. It was a little worn. And she writes her testimony, how much it's affected her, and how she knew it was true, you know. And there was an authenticity to it, John, that I couldn't ignore. You know, it called me. And I became obsessed. It was my new special interest. And I was reading that book day and night. You know, we'd be sitting in class. I'm reading that book. I'm not even paying attention. So I'm reading that book and like, hey, I want to learn more. Tell me more. She's like, all right, you got to meet the missionaries. And
her life is made. She's like, wow, usually it's not this easy.
Yeah.
That's what we call a golden convert.
That's right.
You know, it was an easy process because it felt so right. A lot of it made sense, but what really called to me was that there was actually an emotional component to it. It felt right. And the church talks about feelings, you know, the Holy Ghost. You know, pay attention to how you feel as you read it. I start going to the activities, and it's a college award. Okay, so it's different. People who don't want to go to church in college, they don't go. So I was surrounded by people who believed. And these people were so kind. They were so genuine. And they believed. I remember my first fast and testimony meeting. One guy gets up. I heard his testimony. And I'm like, man, like, what is this? Well, like, what am I feeling right now? You know, feelings, they were so hard for me already. And I'm starting to feel something like so special. And I'm like, all right, you know, there's something here. You know, there's something here and it's special and I can't ignore it, you know. I'm going to see this one through. I'm going to see it through. And I'm reading and I'm praying for the first time in my life. I'm praying. You know, it was really hard to pray. It felt so awkward to do it. But I'm like, I'm going to give it a shot. First prayer was so broken, so short. Something like, hey, you know, God, if you're there, you know, just help me out. Period. Done. You know, period. And I started praying with the missionaries. I loved hearing their prayers, you know. And they would pray for me. I'm like, man, these people, like, they really care. And there was a genuineness that it called me, and it called me hard. Mm-hmm. And they say, hey, Paul, like, you got to pray, you know. And I love that. They're like, you pray and find out for yourself. And it felt so low pressure, right? Activities were great. I loved the talks. Sunday school was so much fun. But, you know, to join a church, that was a big change for me. Big change in identity. You know, all my friends are like, no, this is jaded Paul. You know, the Paul we know, he doesn't believe in God. As a matter of fact, he hates God. You know, like, what's going on? And that relationship I was in from high school, it carried over. And she didn't like it. She did not like it. She says, she says, hey, Paul, they only want your 10%. That's all they want. Don't do it. The problem was she went to a different college, so I didn't see her. And I couldn't ignore it. So I continued to stay with the church. I felt a little embarrassed, to be honest. My family found out. And they're like, hey, mijito, you know, those Mormons, you know, you got to watch out for them. You know, Bible says this. You know, Book of Mormon, it's not true. It can't be. It's not possible. So they didn't like it. Girlfriend didn't like it. My friends didn't like it. And a part of me felt uncomfortable with it because it was a big change. You know, it's like going from Democrat to Republican. It's like, whoa. Like, that, you know, you're almost untrustworthy at that point, you know. But Moronites promise, you know, they say, hey, you got to pray. You got to pray, find out for yourself. I'm like, all right, that's fair. It makes sense to me. And I would pray. I loved praying with people from the church. They were so friendly and so kind. I still remember, John, that prayer. I was with that friend from studio, and I prayed with her, and I swear to God, God answered my prayer. I swear to God he did. And I was overcome. I was overcome with this just swelling emotion of the heart. I had not been moved like that as long as I could remember. As long as I could remember. I'm like, oh my God, this is real. This is real. And I'm doing it. Like, I'm doing it, damn it. I don't care. I don't care what my family says. I don't care what my friends say. Yeah, big deal, big change. But you know what? If it's true, it's true, right? And you got to do it. Some of that black and white thinking kicked in where, like, if it's true, you just do it. Doesn't matter.
And when let's just say the Never Mormons who don't know what you mean, what was true? Like, if you had to summarize 4 or 8 sort of like pillars of what you came to believe, what messages did you derive from the missionaries and from the Book of Mormon? Yeah,
absolutely. So one is that that the true church of God himself, it has been restored, that he has inspired leaders on this earth today, that Jesus Christ himself, speaks through these prophets, and that his kingdom is on the earth again, and what his prophets teach, it's true, right? It might seem illogical at times. Maybe we don't have answers for it, but it doesn't matter because it's true, John. You just do it, right? And that was a big deal for me. And as long as I understood it, I almost didn't think about it, right? Because it's true. What more do you need if it's true?
What'd you come to believe about Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon?
Yeah. One, Joseph Smith, that he was the prophet of the restoration, that Jesus Christ and God himself had appeared to him, that he had a special mission on this earth. And it was his job to bring the Book of Mormon and to prove that he was a prophet of this dispensation. Church is back. Here's the proof. Read it and you can find out for yourself. So I was a believer. I believed, I was in and I believed. I had that experience with that friend in the room, and she saw it. She saw it, and that moved her too,
Yeah.
And that only confirmed, how true it was for the both of us. So we both felt it.
Yeah.
I know it. I know God answered my prayer. And I had a testimony, and no one was going to take it from me. I had a powerful testimony of it, and I was so proud to have it. I felt so lucky that God himself, had answered his prayer to me.
Yeah.
I felt, I had felt so far removed from being loved and being worthy. And that, that I'm a child of God, that I have a value, I have a plan on this earth. It's like, oh my God,
Yep.
that changed my life.
Yeah.
It made me unstoppable. I was baptized shortly thereafter. Everyone came to my baptism. It was so great to see them. I felt so loved. And here's the thing, like, they were for real. They were for real. Their parents weren't there to, like, make them go. And, I felt their love. And I felt the Savior's love, too. I felt his love. And it was so real. And I was in it to win it, John. After that, I'm like, man, I'm preaching this gospel.
You're
and I would go
in.
out with it.
Locked in, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Like, you're not taking this from me. I don't care who you are. I don't care what facts you might have, You just haven't done it right. You have not done it right. Because if you had, you would have experienced what I did. Okay?
Right.
Like, you got to do it right. Keep trying. Keep trying. We'll help you. So I was not as a missionary. I would go out with the missionaries every week. I'm like, dude, I'm there with you guys. I want to share my testimony. I want to change lives too. And they were happy to have me. And I loved being with them. The missionaries, they were some of my superheroes, coolest people you'll ever meet. I loved that they were young, sacrificing so much. And we'd knock doors together. I would spend 4 to 6 hours a week.
Dang, as a college student.
Yeah. Absolutely. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was a blessing and an honor to preach this gospel, John. You know,
I'm thinking about how, like, as a devout Mormon, the last thing I would have wanted to do in college would be to like go proselyte. But then I think about the fact that so many high demand religions recruit college students because it must be a prime time to get recruited, to give you to find a mission and meaning and purpose and community.
Yeah.
That the right college student would love to get snatched up by a high demand religion, depending on how they're doing internally.
Right.
Absolutely.
Their psychological kind of template. Because I'm noticing too, this is an emotional experience to you. Like, it feels almost like an emotional awakening where some of the holes that you kind of came into college with, being seen, being heard, being truly valued, being
loved,
part of something, belonging, like they were filled during this time in a real way that still makes you feel emotional when you think of it.
It was real. I mean, you see it. Like, I'm not going to lie about it. It was so real. And those who saw it knew it was real, and I knew it was real. And John and Margie, I felt the Savior's love. I absolutely did. Like, no, it was. Okay? It really was. So it absolutely checked that emotional box. It did. Oh, my God. Like, I didn't know this was a thing. Okay? The church also checked a lot of my neurodivergent boxes. So structure, I thrive on structure. And there are activities, there were 5 activities a week, same day every week. So I always knew what was next. Same with church. You have your block. Here's the lesson.
Yes.
I always knew what was next. I was baptized. Hey, we got the priesthood for you. You have to do this first, meet with them. Boom, got it. Then you can, move on to this. Boom, mission next for you, right? So it was laid out for me, and I loved that.
That plan, that structure.
Also black and white thinking, right?
Black and white thinking, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So
good and bad, true and false, it's all there.
Absolutely.
And on the ADHD side, do you feel like it had the novelty? Here is something completely new, right? That you can kind of rabbit hole or really...
Yes.
Yeah.
I loved Institute. I went to Institute. I did the Institute thing. There were so many manuals. And John and Margie, I actually read them. I learned, like, no one reads them. No, I read them. I would mark them up. People would show up. They'd be like, oh, shoot, like, we got to act like we read them. And I just love talking about the gospel, all the things, general conferences, magazines. Like, give it to me. I'll read it. And I did. So it was all new, so much to learn. And it checked that, wrinkling my brain box in that novelty box. I loved it. It was absolutely what I needed.
I have a question. When you made the decision to get baptized, so when your family or your girlfriend when they realized you were going to do it, you actually were going to, how did they respond to that? And did they attend your baptism?
Yeah. So my girlfriend, she did not approve. And we broke up before we set a baptismal date. We were on a call. And this is where the ADHD kicked in, impulse control, right? And I didn't even really know much about the church at that point. And I was getting a little frustrated, like, hey, this is something I want to do. Can you, like, be on my team about it? And she didn't like it. And then, you know what? I did, almost in a snap, like, hey, we're breaking up. We're breaking up. I was not expecting for us to break up on that call. I was not expecting that. And we broke up.
Okay.
My family, they did not approve. They were unhappy with it. But
Did they say why?
Because it's not a true gospel. It's not the gospel of Christ. It's not his. Mm-hmm. They attended anyway. Okay. So that was really nice of them to do. But they did not approve.
I should have asked this earlier, but knowing that you drilled deep and read the Book of Mormon and have a Mexican American background, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
What did you internalize about the Book of Mormon Lamanite kind of narrative?
Yeah.
Did you have thoughts about the dark skin curse in the Book of Mormon and your ancestors being defined as Lamanites for you, which would make you a descendant of the Lamanites? Did any of that come into your mind space during this time?
It did. The curse, I did read that in the Book of Mormon. It did not hit me as a kind of a toxin. It was biblical language, and it just happened to have happened. Part of His plan. I did proudly accept the Lamanite heritage. Yeah, like those are my people. And this Book of Mormon was written for them and for me, So it was personal, like, hey, this book, it's for me. It's true, and proud to be a part of this plan to preach this gospel.
Okay. Around what year were you baptized?
I was baptized 2006, April.
Okay. All right. So, how long between your baptism and your mission?
I wanted to do the mission thing, even before baptism. And I went to the bishop's office, and I'm like, hey, what do I got to do this thing? He says, hey, you got to be a member for a year. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And baptized April, and I was in the MTC June of the following year. I was in it to win it, brother.
Were you raised dual language?
Spanish was my first language as a child.
Okay.
And I forgot it. Lived with Dad, and he spoke English. He became mainstream very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, so I forgot it.
Okay, so you weren't dual language.
No.
Okay. So where'd you get called?
That's right. So, submit the papers. Get the envelope. Call the friends. Open the envelope, and it's a Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Oh, okay.
And everyone was excited. Foreign mission. And I was like, I didn't know foreign was like cool, versus stateside or whatever. And I'm like, hey man, I'm happy to preach the gospel wherever. And that was so real. I wasn't trying to virtue signal. I'm like, I'll go wherever He needs me to go. And so it was Buenos Aires, Argentina. Started learning a little more about their culture, who they're all about. And I dropped off at the airport a couple months later. By my dad and sister, and I still see them in my mind's eye as I'm going up the escalator and saying bye.
This LAX?
I'm pretty sure it was LAX. Yeah. And man, it was starting to hit me. Like, you're going to be gone. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a solo journey for a bit. Yeah. So arrived at the MTC. And something terrified me at the MTC. I'm dropped off. You see all these kiddos, parents, waving them off. And I was used to this, Sean, being a loner. Activities and stuff at school. Everyone else's parents showed up, not mine. Par for the course. Didn't even bother me. And then they kick it off. I forget who it was, mission president. I forget how many thousands of us there were in the auditorium. And he gives a really inspirational speech, part of it, God's army, X number of missionaries have been here before you. You're part of this next great wave. And something really odd happened afterwards where we're all lined up or we get called. And I'm put in a room with one of the MTC priesthood leaders. And he hands me a sheet of paper, and it's a scripture or a quote from a general authority, and it's about sexual purity. And as I read it, my heart, it sank. My heart sinks as I read this, and I go, oh shit. Oh shit. And And it was something to the effect of, purity as a missionary and sexual sin. And I'm like, oh my God, they know. They know. Right before being set apart as a missionary, maybe the day before, if not maybe 2 days before, I had a sexual experience with someone. It felt great, doing it. Felt like I was shooting heroin. And, but I felt like shit afterwards too. So many people had rooted me on, and I had kept the rules, man. I had done all the things. Like, I was good. And fucked up that night. I did. And I'm like, damn, I have that paper. And he says, read it. You got to read it. And I read it. My heart's pounding. And I feel so small. And he says, hey, is there anything we need to talk about?
Is this your branch president in the MTC? Or?
I don't remember.
Yeah,
I don't think it
probably.
was. Maybe?
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
But he was definitely leadership.
Yeah.
And
Usually you're organized into branches and there's a branch president.
Okay.
That might be who you would confess to.
it was he was absolutely soliciting a confession.
Yeah, yeah.
And I lied, John. I lied. And I said no. And my heart sank when I said that, and I felt so small.
But I don't know if you would have known this at the time, but you would have been probably sent home in disgrace if you had confessed. So
I knew I would be in big trouble.
Yeah.
Big trouble. And most importantly, I did care a lot about God, and being honest with him and authentic with him. Because part of me is like, he's given me so much. He's given me so much. And you just lied. Like, how can you do that? I felt so ashamed. And I carried that. I took that so personally, that sexual experience. And it was a big taint on my soul. And I wondered, like, hey, is this going to affect, if your mission counts? Are these 2 years a giant fraud? And are you going to be called out in the great eternities and be like, hey, this dude right here, yeah, you lied. And all your baptisms, they don't count. And all these people down the line, yeah, like, they're not going to get what they deserve because of you. And it was so tragic and painful, but I had to hide it. I had to carry it. There was no way I was going to go back home. No way.
Wow.
it's too shameful for so many.
So did you compartmentalize it? Just kind of like, how would you describe how you carried it? And
I
still,
did. I managed at times to compartmentalize it, or rather, most of the time. But there were times where something triggering would happen, and man, it would hit me so hard. It would hit me so hard. As a missionary, John, I killed it. I killed it because I believed. When you believe, you're unstoppable. I put a lot of missionaries, I put them to shame, I'm over here like, man, like, this is the Lord's time. Like, you got to get up. You got to do the things, dude. Like, we got to study. Like, there are people waiting out there for us. We need quality lessons. We got to be in sync. We need the Holy Ghost, brother, or elder. We got to do it. And I was a stick in the mud for a lot of these. I was. But a lot of them would later tell me. They'd write notes. They'd tell me after transfers, in the zone meetings. They'd be like, hey, Elder Martinez, like I needed that. You were an inspiration to me. And I love that. I love being an inspiration. I loved having a testimony. It was real. I felt so powerful. And I preached. I saw souls. I love these people. The gospel, it changed me. It really did. I went from jaded, suspicious to like, hey, let's see what this soul's all about. Let's sit down. Tell us your story. And the gospel, like I knew it was going to work for him. Like, hey, I got this thing. Like, it's going to help you.
Get ready.
Yeah. Like, and like, hey, we're servants of God. We're kiddos, but we were sent here by God. Like we were. And if you hear us out, come to church with us, you pray, like I promise you, this is going to change your life. It's changed mine. I talk about all my sacrifice. I was proud. I was proud for what I had given up. I could feel the Savior like, nodding his head, faithful servant. I'm so proud of you. I would feel it. I loved it. I love preaching this gospel, man. It was the best.
And, the Mormon Church has a history of very high baptism numbers in Central and South America and the Philippines and now Africa, but with very low retention rates because, it was pretty easy. I went to Guatemala. It's pretty easy to get a 8-year-old or a 10-year-old kid from a barrio into the baptism waters. So, I mean, you could get 10 or more baptisms a month in many Latin American missions. Was your mission set up that way? High baptism numbers kind of thing? High pressure, high numbers?
So, in brief, no, not really. Okay. And the reason is Argentina culturally is very different from the rest of South America in that they were far more suspicious, jaded, a history of corruption. And it was harder. It was a lot harder to talk to them. They were not as willing to let us in. The Chileans, the Paraguayos, other total, complete opposite. Hey, come on in. Here's a Quilmes. We don't drink. But it was easy with them. They loved meeting with us, open-hearted. Argentines, not so much. A lot of crime. I was accosted or robbed some 10 times.
Whoa.
It was the naivete. Autism, you're so naive. You're not going around thinking people have ulterior motives. You take people at their word.
Right.
You do. You could see them holding a bag, a classic money bags robber situation, running out of bank with a gun and be like, hey, I'm just taking out a loan. I'd be like, oh, okay. Well, that's weird. You got a gun and, bag of cash, but all right, whatever. There must be an explanation. And it's that kind of naivete, I had. Super dangerous, When
you say you were robbed, were you ever robbed like at knife point or gunpoint?
Yeah, I had at least one gun pulled on me. That scared the shit out of me. That feeling of terror. I'd felt it before as a child with my dad, where you're like you might die, and if you felt it, your whole body shrinks, it sinks, and you're just like, oh my God, like this might be it. I had one experience like that, and it scared the shit out of me. It really did. It affected me. I'm sorry, what was the original question, John?
So, no, I think you covered
okay.
it. So, you had a successful mission, and we're in it to win it, and we're obedient and hardworking.
Yeah, man. I was branch president. I was branch president, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved to serve. I loved my congregation. If I could bring up one part of the mission I really didn't like, and kind of speaking to numbers and high pressure, I hated the high pressure component to it. I hated the numbers component to it. Every night, call from the district leader. How many contacts did you do? How many lessons did you do? We had a switch in mission presidents, and this new mission president started publishing everyone's numbers for the mission. So every 6 weeks, publication for the mission, everyone's numbers on for the companionship.
Like a newsletter kind of thing?
Newsletter.
Like a monthly newsletter.
Yep. And it's like, hey, these two missionaries, they got the 12, 6. Man, you do not want to be on the zeros. Zeros are 1.
Monthly baptisms, you mean?
Per transfer.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I hated that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I discouraged some baptisms from happening. There was one counselor, his dad. There's a ward, bishop's counselor. His dad wanted him to get baptized. And I do the interview with him, right? I was a district leader. I interviewed him, and I'm like, hey, he's not ready. He's not ready for baptism. Like, we're not doing it. And I called it off.
Meaning he wasn't like a genuine convert yet.
He had not. I felt that he had not learned enough about the gospel to commit to it. Again, like, this is for real.
Yeah.
You're not going to sign at the dotted line without reading it.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't walk away thinking he understood.
Because you would have been comparing people to your conversion experience, right? Right?
Well, yeah. I did not know that numbers were a real thing. I just thought they were like getting pushed. And I'm like, nah, I don't buy this. This isn't for me. I complied. I did the things, but I made sure they were quality. And if there wasn't quality, I wouldn't do it. Like, screw that. Ultimately, I report to the Savior. You guys can get mad at me all you want, but I don't care. I'm going to do what's right. And it's that black and white thinking, and it can get you in trouble, John, with power dynamics.
It sure can.
Yeah.
I totally relate.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a couple questions through a neurodivergent lens about your mission?
Yeah.
So the first thing is, you referred to, I think, referring to your brain and how it works, someone robbing a bank with a bag and a gun, and how for you, and I think you talked about it like being naive in quotation marks, but really, if we were going to break it down, is it that your brain actually values information differently? It values the information of what people say more than these other. So someone might judge that as naive, but really isn't it a different brain? It's a different brain in how it weighs information.
Absolutely. And that's why, I prefer neurodivergent. Like, hey, I value this more than this.
That's right.
And I tell people, hey, words for me, they're so much easier than like facial expressions.
Right.
A lot of these things are cultural. Like, dude, just use the words.
Right.
And
it's not a choice. It's the way your brain functions. It's the way it's maybe your default setting.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Your brain. Yeah.
I learned eventually to try to read, but it's a really unnatural experience. I have to force it.
Yeah.
And I still get it wrong. I still get it wrong. But for me, the words are what govern, right? So I need to hear the words.
Yeah, I think that's important to kind of for people to understand. And then also the other question I had is for many people going on a mission is kind of this next level experience when it comes to rules and control. And you've stated that for you, oftentimes the rules part and ritual and those things can be really like things that you like. How was a mission for you on this next level of rules, and how did you experience it for your brain?
Absolutely. It was a blessing and a curse. And it was a blessing because it was so easy to follow. 6:30, wake up, I'm up. You're exercising till 7. And I would do it to the dot. Wait for that beep, boom, it's 7. All right, I think it was personal study. All right, 8 to 9, companionship study. Then we get ready and we're out the door at a given time. Down to like getting ready. Hey, it takes 3 minutes from end of this to out the door. Like, let's go. With lessons, hey, our lessons are 60 minutes maximum, and then we're out the door. And dude, I'd do it. I wouldn't care. There's a lot of people, they like to chat. They want to be the missionaries, but I'd be like, hey, we got to teach you this thing. Like, or we're out. Like, we're out of here. And sometimes I just leave. Like, hey, we got to go. We got some things to do. The problem was when I didn't comply and I missed something, right? And there were times I would be late, like a minute. We're supposed to be back by 9:30 for teaching a lesson. One time, I still remember this. I was back at like 9:31, and I'm running. I'm gunning it. And I get through those doors. I look at the clock. I'm like, damn it. Like, we missed it. And then I get this feeling it would just overcome me. And they'd be so powerful. Like, you did it wrong. You did it wrong. And the feelings were really intense. The ADHD probably played a role with the black and white thinking, right? This is the time you come back. Period, done, end of story. And that's how I lived. So I love the structure, but man, when I would get it wrong, I felt so bad, especially as branch president, because I felt like I had other people's souls in my hands, right? So that rule book, man, I read it. I followed those rules. This is what the Lord wants. We're doing it this way. And there were a couple of times I messed up. And I'm like, damn, does this count? Does this count in heaven? Do I tell the member?
Yeah.
Because then they might lose confidence. We want them. We want them in the church, ultimately.
Yeah. For those who don't know, a branch president is comparable to being a bishop, or in the Catholic Church, a priest, or in the evangelical church, a pastor. And it's rare for a Mormon missionary at age 19 or 20 to be called as a branch president, but it happens. I was a branch president twice, actually. And it puts you in a weird position because you may have members confessing adultery to you or financial fraud. I had to have a disciplinary council where we excommunicated a former branch president, and it's just, it puts a kid in a very serious, heavy leadership position before they've even ever really probably dated much or gotten married, let alone had kids, let alone had a chance to commit adultery. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a level of intensity that most Mormon missionaries never have to experience.
Yeah, I did feel embarrassed at times when grandparents would come to me, and be like, hey, I'm having this problem with my kid. Can you help me out? But here's the thing. We both believed in the Spirit.
Yeah.
Hey, if we're both doing it right, like, God will let us know. And I love seeing that just they believed.
Yeah.
And it was so refreshing and rewarding and fulfilling to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an incredible leadership opportunity, but also a lot of pressure. And the final thing I'll say is you're not just worrying about how many baptisms you have in your area. You're worrying about your congregation, the attendance levels. Every Sunday, you're in charge of making sure the church is all set up for sacrament meeting and for Relief Society and Sunday school and the youth programs and the midweek. And so it's a lot.
Yeah.
I just had to say that. Yeah. Okay.
Just before we move on, I was going to ask you really quickly, that voice in your head, I think with like parts work, we could call it like the part that was really aggressive toward you in your head, the part that was really critical of you. Would you say that part was awake and alive during your mission time? Or had it faded? And even through joining the church, had it quieted that part, at least for a time? Tell me just really quickly how joining the church, going on a mission, affected that part.
The negative self-talk. The gospel managed to curb a lot of it. It healed me.
Yeah.
It healed me. And unfortunately, that sexual encounter, though, it would come back. When I was praying, parent comes to me, I have problem A. Can you help me out? Sure. Let me go pray. As I'm praying, am I going to get a real answer?
Or will my sins, my unrepented sins, distort the Holy Ghost's ability to reach me so I won't get the inspiration I need to make the right decision, right?
Yeah. And I'm in charge of these people. It has to be true. I need to do it right. But it was too late. I ain't confessing.
Yeah.
Did it make you feel, did it bring up kind of that fear of you being unlovable again because you had made a mistake, or did that not enter back in?
Oh, absolutely. It was so intense. When it would happen, and all those feelings would rush back. It was terrible. And it's like, you shouldn't be here. You should confess. You're screwing this congregation right now. Okay. It's not going to count. And it was, when it would happen, it was intense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share about your mission before we go to post-mission?
I love my mission. I was so proud.
You fulfilled a 2-year fully honorable mission?
Yeah, I did.
Good for you.
Super proud, man.
Yeah. And did Spanish come easier to you than the gringos, your fellow gringos, or not?
It did. It was humiliating to have the Elder Martinez name tag and be like, soy el misionero. It was such a joke.
Because people would look at you and assume you spoke.
Oh, yeah. And they're like, why is your gringo guy speaking better than you here, bud? And it was a humiliation. And I worked on that one pretty hard. So within 6 months, pretty good, conversational. Within a year, not fluent, but pretty close. We're like, all right, homeboy's from around here.
Oh, that's good, because the Argentine accent's different than even the Central American accent.
Oh yeah, it is. They're proud of that. And
Orgullo, right?
yeah,
Right?
escuchaba una cosa, oh man, all the things. It was fun. It was really fun to learn the accent. I still love using it, throwing it around every once in a while.
Hey, would you feel comfortable bearing your testimony in Spanish
man.
as you would
Or
have
saying,
as a missionary?
You could even just say a few things if you don't recall.
Yeah,
the words.
I'll try. Okay, it's been a while, but bear in mind.
I'll help you. It starts out with Jose.
Yeah. Bueno, escucha. Espérame una cosa primero, okay. Let me introduce myself first. Bueno, somos misioneros de la Iglesia de Jesucristo de los Santos de los Últimos Días. Estamos aquí para enseñarte unas cosas. Hay un profeta hoy en día y queremos que ustedes aprendan más. Yo sé que este libro es verdadero, que hay un profeta hoy en día y que si ustedes nos hacen caso, ustedes también van a recibir ese testimonio.
Del libro de Mormón.
Del libro de Mormón, de la iglesia, se van a convertir. So, lost the Argentine accent there, man,
it's
but
good.
yeah.
Thank you for that.
That's beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you come home. Is that next?
I come home and...
Did your dad write you on your mission? Did your family stay in touch with you?
No.
Did your church friends from USC stay in touch with you?
They did. Yeah. They would
Did
rotate.
you try and convert your ex-girlfriend? I guess while you're on your mission, did you write your family?
Did
you
gotcha.
stay in touch with students at USC or your ex-girlfriends?
I would stay in touch with that one friend primarily.
From
who
studio?
taught me, from studio. And but the ward would rotate. It was a great assignment. They would write, someone would from the ward would write to the missionaries for that week, and that was really cool too. But family, no, not really. I didn't reach out to them, and they didn't reach out to me for the most part.
So it probably drove a wedge between you and your dad. And
my dad didn't really care, relatively aloof. But yes, with my aunts. My aunts did not approve, and it did strain the relationship.
Okay, so you come home.
I come home, superstar, did the thing, did it right, did a great job.
Returned with honor.
Return with honor, baby. And I was so proud of that. I made it.
Yeah.
I made it. And time to get married. What's next? Marriage, baby. And I had dated someone for a tad before the mission. And we decided that we'd end it come the mission. And, nothing romantic. If it works out afterwards, great. If not, not a big deal, which was great. Yeah, it removed a distraction. And she's still around, after the mission. And I think 3 weeks later, John, we're engaged.
3 weeks? What?
Yeah, some 3 weeks. Could have been more than a month. We had a date. And pretty fast. Pretty fast even for Mormon standards, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was the next thing to do, right? And it could have been the ADHD as well. When you know something is next, it's all you can think about, So it's like marriage. We got to do it. Let's do it. Well, what are we waiting for? It's the right thing to do. So we put it on the calendar. I think we changed the date once. I moved it back a little more so more people could come. But the engagement was super fast. And then we get married in the temple.
So were you 23?
I believe I was 23, yeah. 23.
In LA Temple, San Diego Temple?
LA Temple.
Okay.
LA Temple, yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's 0 to 60 in 3 seconds as a Mormon convert, right?
Yeah.
And none of your family would have been able to attend the temple.
They did not.
Marriage, right?
Oh, no, John, let me take it back. I'm sorry. I attended the LA Temple. It was Salt Lake. We got married in Salt Lake. I take it back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still, no family attended your wedding, right?
Absolutely not.
They
were not interested in the church.
Family, yeah.
And they would have sat outside anyway.
Yeah.
What's the point?
Imagine that, everybody. Like, you've converted to a high-demand religion. You go on a mission, you get married, and literally no one from your family is at your wedding. It's all the bride's family. You're not even in the same state you are from, but you've got no family at your wedding. It's kind of a weird, severe thing that maybe people don't realize about Mormonism. How was that for you, or were you loving it because you were following God's path?
Oh man, it was.
Maybe
it was,
you didn't care.
It was the thing.
Yeah.
Like that's what's next. You're doing it.
Yeah. But that says something about how high demand religions can divide family. Because not only did you have no family at your wedding, you didn't even feel sad about it, right? Or maybe notice really.
No, it was par for the course.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to be there. They're not interested. Time to move on.
Yeah.
Really.
It feels layered to me because it's your family system and family culture, as well as then the layer of Mormonism and how they divide as well, right? But it seems like you had sort of some of those expectations late early of not maybe. Am I saying that in an incorrect way?
No, that's fair. Because that was my life. That was my life growing up.
Yeah.
Again, my dad was a recluse. I was not allowed to speak to my other family.
Yeah.
So they didn't attend. My dad didn't attend. If he did, he was super late.
You weren't reconciled with did you reconcile with your mom?
Ah, yes. This is really important. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. So
before your mission, right?
Before the mission.
Okay.
No, this is really important. So parental alienation, divorce, starting at 11 or 12 years old. I don't see my mom. I missed her to death, and I was tortured for it. And shortly before the mission, member tells me, hey, if you're going to be going out there, preaching about families, being forever, and how important they are, you got to reconcile with your mom. You have to. And it's true. I believed it. It was the next thing to do. And I think I reached out to one of my sisters. I'm like, hey, I'm going to reach out to mom. Can you let her know what's her number? And we set up a meeting. We met at Tito's Tacos in L.A. I know your listeners have heard of it.
Santa Monica?
It might be in the border, Santa Monica and L.A. Yeah, it's pretty close. And
I think I've been there, actually.
You probably have. Yeah, we had gone there a lot when I was a kid. Just super symbolic place to go. Really symbolic. And
you'd been there with your mom as a kid.
Yeah, mom and dad. It was a family thing.
Yeah.
So, hey, let's meet at Tito's. And I saw my mom. She was sitting at the same table we would sit at. And I walked through those doors and I'm like, hey, it's your kiddo. It's me, Polito. Last time she'd seen me, I was 11 maybe. Here I am, 20, 21 years old. It breaks my heart to think that ever happened. I have an 11-year-old now, and to think if he turned his back on me, refused to see me, and then to see him as a 21-year-old, man. The church did that, John. Okay, if it weren't for the church, that would have never happened. So again, another testimony to me, man.
The church helped you reconcile with your
absolutely.
mom. So that's a positive thing the church did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The church, man, it put so many things together for me. It did me a solid.
Yeah.
It's true, John.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So what do you say to your mom when you haven't seen her for 10 years and you converted to the Mormon church and you're going on a mission?
Yeah. It was tough. What do you say? And I think I might have said something like, hey, Mom, going on a mission. And I figured it'd be a good idea for us to, to chat and try to restore the relationship.
So at this point, when you're meeting her, are you still believing the narrative that your dad gave you, or have you started to question that narrative and see her in a different way?
I'm questioning it, absolutely. And even then, maybe I kind of believed it. I still wanted to talk to her. Hey, is this true? Let's chat and figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. I felt the conditioning though. Okay, I walked through those doors there's Mom. And again, those two magnets at the same polarity. I felt that urge to just turn around, walk away.
Yeah,
I had to fight it, and I did. Yeah, no, that conditioning was deep.
Yes,
it was deep. But the church, man, it helped me power through it.
Yeah, those teachings of Christ-like forgiveness can come in handy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And was your mom happy to reconcile with you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was great. I'm so glad we did it. It was, bummer happened, but these things happen. Every life has its traumas, and its reconciliations.
Did she write you on your mission? Did you call her?
She did. She wrote me
Day?
a couple times. She would write me for major holidays, Christmas. It was hard. It was hard to see her writing, again, fighting a lot of that conditioning. And I'd read it like, hey, Polito, Spanish, of course. And, love you. And, stay safe.
Yeah.
What'd she call you again?
So first name's Paul, Polito.
So I'm thinking Pablito. But...
I dodged that bullet. I think it's because it was my dad's name. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Paulito.
Just Polito, P-O-L.
Polito. Polito. Okay.
Polito, yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. Okay. So you come home. So your mom didn't come to your marriage either, your wedding?
No.
Okay.
Didn't come.
Okay. But at least you're reconciled.
Yeah, reconciled. Some siblings came, which is great.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so a couple siblings came out to make the drive.
But they didn't get to attend
They did not
the
attend.
service.
No, they sat out on the steps
of the temple while you were married. And that is we don't like to use the C word, the cult word on Mormon Stories, but prohibiting, non-Orthodox Mormon family members or non-LDS family members from attending weddings is one of the worst and most cult-like things about Mormonism, I'd have to say. But that's just me.
That is you. Yes.
So, okay. So had you graduated from USC by the time you were married? Or?
No.
Okay.
And had graduated, I think it was a third-year architecture student.
Yeah.
And we had a kiddo that last year.
Wow.
Oh, so you had a baby soon after getting married.
Yeah, 2.5 years later, maybe.
Okay.
So you had school, marriage, and a baby.
And a baby.
Wow.
And I was working 20 hours a week at one point in a different county.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
super busy.
Okay.
But, but proud to bring a little, spirit into the earth. And family is something I'd always wanted, and couldn't wait. Couldn't wait to have a kiddo, and be a powerful leader. That's something the church really taught me as well. Priesthood leadership, man. I had great priesthood leaders. Okay, I know some have had some bad experiences, not me. I love sitting down with them. They were always really positive experiences. I would walk away, walking out those doors like empowered with a mission and a plan. These were the parents, the dads I never had. And I was excited to model and emulate that, for my kid and to have the gospel while doing it,
Did you notice that you felt maybe that you had, maybe like a secret to give you like the family you never had, kind of like, I'm going to do it right. And did you feel that kind of arise in you as you started your family, this sense of like, and that maybe you even had the power to do it because you had the gospel?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I was looking forward to breaking the cycle.
Yeah.
It's like someone has to do it, and I'm going to do it. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be a lot of work, but I have the gospel. That was my secret weapon. Loved having it. It was a game changer for me. Showing affection was a big deal. Okay. And I was bent on showing these kids, how much their dad loved them. Mm-hmm. And the message is always like, Dad's there for you. Dad will always be there for you. And I was excited to show affection, to show it, to receive it. The mission taught me actually a lot about brotherly affection. That was a game changer for me. A lot of trauma bonding, but a lot of like, I love yous, and it was genuine. We'd hug each other. Mission was painful, a lot of work, a lot of unanswered questions, but there's so much love in it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it changed me, the gospel, jaded, unwilling to show real affection, even to say, I love you. Couldn't do it.
How many kids did you end up having in that marriage?
So I have 3 beautiful boys.
Okay. And how close together were they?
Yeah. Oh, let's see. I have a 8-year-old, 11, 13-year-old, almost 9, 12, 14 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And just quickly, how did your career go? We'll just give a spoiler alert. The marriage ended. You were married for how many years?
It was 12 years.
Okay. And during those 12 years, how did your career progress? And how did your church service progress?
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for asking. Career, killed it with the career, man. I picked the right career. Okay. Architecture. So I'm an architect, licensed, took all the tests, super proud of that. I got the stamp. Architecture is a perfect blend of novelty and structure. My special interest, John, is the California Building Code, baby. I just love reading it. I love reading that.
You're a nerd.
I love that so much. I love that you would say, I love reading it.
I love that damn code book, man. And
because it's your superpower.
Oh, man. It has,
is a superpower.
Yeah. Most people, they hate it. They hate the rules. They do architecture for design. And, I could put a design together. It's just not as fun for me. It's not a natural experience. For me, I'm a project architect. That's the term. I'm nuts and bolts, baby. Like, all right, how's this thing going to get built? Tell me about the fire ratings. What's the occupancy load? All the technical. But there's analysis with it too, and that's where the novelty comes into play. You're a pseudo lawyer, really. You need to make an argument to the city, like, hey, here's our building, here's the building code that applies, here's my analysis, here's why it works. Tell me I'm right. I love it. So I picked the right career. So I'm not necessarily brilliant. It's just, man, it just checks the boxes for me. So I did really well. My claim to fame, it was with another company, so I don't want to take credit for it. But I was on a team that did one of San Diego's largest projects, a $400 million project. And I was a nuts and bolts guy on it, drawing details, putting the drawings together. Eventually, I start helping build it. I work with the contractor. He's sending questions my way. And I loved answering those questions. Again, it was novel but structured. New question, here's the process for it. Here's a new question, process. And again, I just learned so much from it. It was a life-changing experience. And it opened a lot of doors for me professionally. Once you have something like that under your belt, you're unstoppable.
So career did quite well.
Absolutely. Career has done well. And shall we talk a little bit more about the church?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your faith journey, maybe?
All right. So the church did well, John. Got some pretty cool callings. I was Sunday school president, going to all the meetings, elders quorum president. Let's see, I was in the youth program. It was so cool to be trusted.
You were a young men leader?
I was not a leader. I was in leadership.
Yeah.
I was always in some form of leadership. Oh, ward mission leader. Of course. I was a ward mission leader.
Put the convert in.
Convert in, baby.
Yes.
Yeah, he's on fire. He's on fire. And it was true. And again, like, I took those callings seriously. I did. Read the manuals. Like, we got souls, brothers. Like, let's go. We have things to do. And thing is novelty. Novelty, right? There comes a point where I feel like I've heard this before. I've heard this before. All right. And I start to get bored. I'm like, what's this talk about? Obedience. Okay. What's this lesson on? Prayer. How good it is. Okay. Living prophets. Do we have them? I think I've heard this one before.
Priesthood authority.
And what was interesting too is I already knew a lot of this stuff, because I'm reading this stuff already. Love to read.
I mean, if you read the Institute manuals, that's pretty much all you'll ever learn for the rest of your life as a Mormon, right?
Pretty much.
Sunday school won't go any deeper.
Oh, no. That's confirmed. So you're right. Yeah. Sunday school is going to be even more superficial.
Yeah.
Right? My joy was teaching and helping people. That was a blessing and an honor. I loved it, participating in a meaningful way in people's lives. It was the lessons. Some of those meetings, man, priesthood meeting, ward council, they became a chore. They became extremely repetitive. I didn't mind the structure. I love that they were at the same time, same place, same time of the week. Even Lived an Agenda, again, right, answers the question, what's next? But we were talking about the same stupid things every time. I joined one ward where I get a leadership calling right away. I love that. Paul shows up, hey, he's got a great history, put him in leadership. And within 3 weeks, I'm attending a ward council. And man, this ward council, there was backbiting, a lot of passive aggressive remarks. People would fawn what the bishop would say. Bishop recommends, oh, great idea, Bishop, let's do it. What do you think? Oh, I think that's a great idea. And, Paul says what he means, and he means what he says. That's the autistic person in me.
It's weird that we pathologize that.
Yeah, I know, right? That's why it's not fair. We shouldn't
versus passive aggression. And you've already said this before today, but passive aggression is normalized and somehow healthy.
Yeah, baby. And that's why, I'm neurodivergent, brother. Don't put me in the DSM-5. That's not cool. And so I'd speak my mind, and I'd be like, "Hey, Bishop, I've heard this before, and these are the problems you're going to run into, right? You got low attendance here. We don't have a space for it. What do our volunteers number look like?" And I'm super logistics about it. Tell me who's going to do it, when are they going to do it, how long is it going to take to do it? Are we going to have to set up cones? I see this thing running its course.
You're a project manager.
Yeah. I got to see this through. I need real answers. And I started to hear a lot of bogus answers. At first I was able to just ignore it. We'll find a way. But there came a point where no, I need a real answer to these things. And I became, what's the term? I am not popular. I was not popular in ward council. At one point, Bishop calls me aside, says, "Hey, Paul, we're noticing some negativity here, and when I say something, it kind of goes." And I'm like, well, why didn't you just say that? Why are you asking it's a question when in reality you're telling? And I missed a lot of that, right? Autism. A lot of people,
valid question.
Well, I think it's fair, right? I think it's fair. But most neurotypicals, they don't work that way.
Yeah.
I've learned that they don't work that way. It's still super hard for me to accept. But it's a part of the culture. Really,
right.
The Mormon culture is passive aggression. You avoid direct feedback. You avoid hurting feelings. It's all about being pleasant and, make sure the spirit doesn't leave, which is strange, again, because that ward council, it was dysfunctional. So I saw a lot of dysfunction. I'm like, this ain't inspired. I don't see the inspiration. I see a lot of weird cultural things with kissing leadership's butt and I'm getting in trouble. I'm getting in trouble. I have ideas for the elders. I was the Elders Quorum president, and programs were coming through from Salt Lake. And I see these things. We would meet at a stake leadership meeting, and I'd be like, this doesn't work. This doesn't work for my elders. Raise my hand. Hey, there are only 5 of us attending. How do you expect us to do this? Hey, elder, you got to pray. You got to make it happen. And I'm thinking that's not what my elders need. Okay, they need to be at home with their families. Okay, they're stressing the hell out. The gospel asks for a lot, and I'm hearing what they have to say. I'm actually checking in with these people. I'm not there to direct. I'm there to help,
support.
Right? Yeah, I'm here to support. Yeah. I thought that's what these callings were for. Ultimately, you're there to help. Spirits and souls find meaning in what they're doing. And even if they don't accept the gospel, they're still a soul, right? They're still a human being. You got to treat them right. There was one experience, Sean, that really struck a chord with me. I was given an assignment to visit a less active person. And I sent them a text, hey, when can I come over? And I got back one of the nastiest, most visceral responses. And it scared me. Oh my God. This person's really upset. I report back to ward council. I share hey guys, look at what's happening with our, reactivation efforts here. Look at this text. And I read it. And then someone laughed. They laughed and they're like, oh yeah, these things happen, don't worry about it. And I'm like, no, like this hurt them. Like this was a wound. Like I could tell by the message, we didn't just annoy them. Okay. Like this was a real hurt for this person. And they wrote it off. Like, just try again in 6 months. And that really pissed me off. And I'm starting to notice like, okay, this isn't about genuine, meaningful help for, God's children. This is about numbers. Did you contact the person? It almost doesn't even matter what they said. It's like, did you reach out to them? More programs are coming through and I'm like, this doesn't work. We don't need this. And I was pissing off the wrong people and I got in trouble.
Do you remember around what year it was that you started having this disaffection?
This was about 2012.
Okay.
2012, new ward, new dynamic. So I think the dysfunction I saw, along with desperately kind of seeking novelty, I started to, think, maybe these programs, maybe they're not inspired. Maybe these are, programs people put together, roll the dice. Hopefully it works. But man, that thought scared the shit out of me,
Because when you joined, you assumed what? Or you
I didn't assume
what?
it, John. I knew it.
You knew what?
That everything that that came from church leadership was inspired. And if we didn't understand, it's because we weren't doing the right thing yet. We'll get an answer. It'll work out in the end. Just do it.
And maybe this is also an important aspect of autism spectrum disorder and black and white thinking, because there's a lot of believing Mormons that are kind of more liberal, more progressive, but they see the gospel in terms of shades of gray or even multicolored spectrum. So it's not all true or all false, all right or all wrong, all inspired or all uninspired. It's, it's a mess. It's sort of that quote, we all see through a glass darkly. Yeah. That's how somebody that was proficient in nuance might approach the gospel. But I really relate to this because I think I might qualify for some sort of neurotypical diagnosis because I was always self-stimming. I was always chewing on my pencil. I was always chewing on my pen. I was so fidgety that my teachers would punish me for never being able to stay in my seat. But also I was very much a black and white thinker. Yeah. It was true or false. It was right or wrong. I'm the kid that followed all the rules because you follow all the rules and that's just what you do. It was never a question. So once I started pulling on the thread, like it all starts unraveling because it's either all true or it's all false. And so I guess I just am connecting it back to the neurodivergent thing because I'm thinking in my mind on the one hand, wait, Paul, you were just telling us how amazing your missionary conversion experience was, how true it felt, how amazing your mission experience was. So like you could endure anything because you just had so much passion for the church. But if it starts ringing as not true, it starts leaning in the false direction. If you're that binary thinker, you go with the false.
Well, that's my question.
Over like it's all messy, and sometimes the prophets and bishops get it right, and sometimes the prophets and bishops get it wrong. Maybe a neurodivergent brain wouldn't do that. What were we going to say?
That's my question. So at that point where you're starting to have these experiences, your lived experience of the gospel, right? Did it flip all of us? Like, what was your experience of being like, wait a second, this now, this is not what I thought it was. This does not play into, it being true in the way was it an immediate flip? Were you trying to tolerate it and it broke? Like, how would you talk about the experience of it?
Yeah. It was pretty sudden. The thoughts, like, wait a minute, you know,
Yeah.
wait a minute. Maybe these are just good people with good intentions. But here's the thing, like that thought, it was so intense and it scared the shit out of me. I had one experience with the bishop, and I knew what he was telling me was not inspired. I knew it. I knew it wasn't. And it's like, oh my God. You know,
Did you feel panic?
bishops? Oh, yeah. And I remember sitting there. And here's the thing, I didn't want to freak out. I didn't want him to know that I was freaking out and questioning. And I sat there. It was upsetting to hear what I knew was false. Like, no, Bishop, that ain't inspired. I don't want to hear it. And it was tough to sit and take it. And I started to have really terrible experiences and feelings of powerlessness. And they started in that office in a really intense way, because I couldn't criticize him anymore. Like, I was getting in trouble. Okay. And he's the priesthood leader. He's in charge. You do what he says. And I'm over here thinking, like, nah, homeboy ain't inspired. I don't want to do it. But you have to do it. And it flipped, where it was no longer do it and have faith, you'll figure it out. It's you're doing something you don't really believe in, and it hurts. Okay, now you're being inauthentic with yourself. Okay, really hard for a neurodivergent to do that. We are stupid authentic. Okay, yeah, but I held it in. You know, it was such an unnatural experience. It shook me. Okay, it shook me, and I left his office. I went home. It affected me. My wife saw it, you know, like something happened. You know, the last time I was affected that deeply, it was a sexual assault, okay? I was shook. That really scared the shit out of me. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. And the problem was, like, I had to keep working with him, you know? It is so dangerous to openly share, that maybe you don't think this is true. That maybe, to even be curious, to entertain that thought that, like, hey, let's think about what Bishop said. Go home, pray, see what, you know, if we think it's right. If that's your gospel, you're toast, okay? Yeah, sure, you're going to get kicked out of church, but you're not going to get invited to activities anymore. You'll eventually lose your calling. You know, it won't be sudden, but you ain't getting a prestigious calling after that. You know, you ain't going to be called back anymore.
After you report a sexual assault?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I'm talking about
once he's
questioning.
identified as a questioning person.
Yeah,
Right.
Identified as a questioner. Sorry. Thank you for the clarification.
Once you're flagged as a
Bingo.
As a questioner,
As a
doubter.
disruptor
Yeah.
to the system.
Yeah.
In quotation marks. Yeah.
And hey, man, I did it too. You know, when I was all believing, you know, be like, uh-oh, you know, he's starting to question. He's losing the faith is how I had it. He's losing the faith. You know, it's time. Like, we have to, what's the term when there's like a virus that spreads, you know?
Yeah.
We have to isolate him. And I didn't want that.
It's almost like when we talk about neurodivergent people being black and white, I've heard people compare the church to sort of a narcissistic, abusive person, but you could also almost compare the church in some ways to a neurodivergent person, because there is that black and white thinking from the Mormon church perspective. All true, all false, say what you believe no matter what. I don't know.
You mean having
passion,
like a characteristic?
Yeah. Having passion for rules, for structure, for order. I don't know.
So it has characteristics, maybe,
I mean,
is the way I would say it.
If the church was attracted to you as a neurodivergent person, it must have been because the church lines up in many ways with the types of things that a neurodivergent person likes.
It's true.
Right?
You know, super structured. Agenda is corporate. You know, it's super corporate. And I love that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But the church saw you black and white. Once you start questioning your if you're not with us, you're against us.
Yeah. And here's why, John, because by the time you get there, okay, you know, floodgates are open at that point, you know. So people worry. I was taught that as a ward mission leader, right? You know, once you start hearing these kinds of things, you know, Paul, they're pretty much done. They're pretty much done. Be careful.
So is that in your mind for yourself?
Oh, absolutely. You know, like if I ask the wrong question, like, wait, whoa, Paul, weren't you Yellow's Quorum president, Sunday school president, or mission leader? Why are you even asking that? Well, what's going on? You know, I was terrified. I was not convinced yet that it was all false. You know, it was just the thought that, oh my God, they can be wrong, and not only wrong, but dead wrong. Okay, yeah. If they were even kind of maybe right, I forgive them. All right, you know, within tolerance for human, you know, ability to recept kind of divine messages. But homeboy was wrong. This bishop was so wrong about things, and that was too much. It was too much for me. And finally, all right, you know, it's time. You know, let's start learning a little more about this. And I went to outside sources, John.
Can I jump in and ask you one quick question before you talk about the outside sources? You would have been in California during Prop 8.
Was.
When the Mormon Church basically did or maybe on your mission.
Was it 2008?
Yeah.
I heard about it, and I think I felt some of its effects, yeah. Okay, I was on my mission.
You weren't asked to canvass for the church during Prop 8.
No.
Because I wonder how you might have felt about the church basically declaring war on same-sex married gay people. But it sounds like you probably dodged a bullet in terms of your membership by being on a mission during Prop 8, because I imagine you wouldn't have loved canvassing for the church against gay people in California.
You know, John, I actually don't know how to answer that. And here's why. Is I probably would have subscribed to the gospel doctrine at that point, you know. So maybe I would love to say I would have turned it down, but I was a believer, John.
Yeah,
I accepted it, you know.
Okay.
I might have.
Okay, got it. Okay, because that would have been before the wheels started coming off the wagon for you. Okay, just had to check in about that, knowing how your story ends. No spoilers. So anyway, okay, so you start in 2012-ish, you start digging into more outside sources, which of course, in all high demand religions, they tell you never to consult outside sources or outside information.
Yeah, right? And I remember... dude, I'm sitting in front of that computer, browser's up, you know, and I start typing. And my heart was pounding, you know, like, oh shit, you know, Paul, once you do this, you know, what if? You know, what if? And I was so scared. And I remember typing in, I forget what it was. Might have just been Google, you know, typed in like, who was Joseph Smith? Something like that. And I typed it, and man, like my heart was pounding. I felt terrible. I felt so bad, like I'd killed someone. You know, I felt so guilty, so ashamed. But there was that part of me too, where it's like, I need to learn. I have to know, you know, like what's going on, like what's going on here, you know. The church, it was a relationship, John. You know, and here I am finding out, like, you weren't honest with me, maybe. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Especially when I was pretty much goddamn honest with you.
Yeah.
You know? Like, you need to tell me. Like, this is fair. So I was terrified to do it. But at the same time, I'm like, nah, this is fair. Like, I'm entitled to this. You know, I don't care how much you've done for me. If you've done this, like, no, it doesn't matter. I'm doing it. And I did. I looked it up. And
what'd you learn?
What did I learn?
What did the missionaries not tell you?
Yeah. Oh my God. So much, John. So much about Joseph Smith and who he was and what he had done. You know, his failed bank. Like, wait a minute, this is Inspired Bank. Like, it shouldn't fail. all these promises that had been made by previous prophets, like super black and white. Okay, wait a minute. Like, that's wrong. Super wrong, like demonstrably wrong. And they said it on the record, right? I started to read more and more. Some of the stuff Joseph Smith did, man, like marrying 20 people before his real wife found out, right? That her own counselors were married to Joseph Smith. And then Emma shows up like, hey, I heard about this polygamy thing. Can you help me out? You know, what do you know about it? And they lied.
They were married to her husband.
They were married to Joseph Smith. And dude, stuff like that,
Yeah.
it crushed me.
Yeah.
My heart broke for Emma at that point.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no way. Other just factual stuff about like the three witnesses, who they were.
To the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, three witnesses for the Book of Mormon, their credibility, right? You know, Martin Harris. And he testified about a lot of things, apparently, you know, not just about the Book of Mormon, but about other sets of scripture. And it's like, wait a minute. Like, why do we believe him here, but then not here?
He was super gullible to lots of different religious leaders, not just Joseph Smith.
Absolutely. Yeah, and a lot of doctrinal stuff too, like priesthood restoration. Apparently, two homeboys didn't show up on that riverside, that bank. Never happened.
Peter, James, and John.
Peter, James, and John. There you go.
The Melchizedek priesthood probably was never really given to Joseph Smith.
Yeah, that thing was a fabrication.
He made it up later and inserted it back when his credibility was being challenged.
That's right. In that Book of Commandments, in Doctrine and Covenants, homeboy changed a lot. And they weren't just clarifications. I was told they were clarifications, and I can live with that. But he made material changes to the doctrine.
Reversed meaning.
Absolutely.
Removed stuff completely.
Yeah.
Added stuff that totally changed the meaning.
Yeah, and it was way after the fact.
Yeah.
Like, no, like, this is not a clarification. Someone went out of their way to do this, okay?
We're talking about changes between the original, Book of Commandments and then the doctrine, later versions of the Doctrine and Covenants. There's a whole series entitled LDS Discussions where we dig into a lot of this church history and these church things. If you want to learn more, you can find it on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And there's a YouTube playlist called LDS Discussions. So, okay, keep going.
Yeah. At first it's shock. I've experienced trauma in my life, and at first it's shock. You're just like, you're paralyzed, but I couldn't stop reading it either. Like, what else? What else have you not told me?
So did this become a special interest?
Oh my God, it did.
Yeah,
absolutely. I was doing the thing 6 hours a day, reading. I could compete with Dan Vogel at this point.
we call it going down the rabbit hole.
Down the rabbit hole, baby. Yeah. I couldn't stop reading.
Over what time frame are we talking?
Yeah, I started to probably 2013.
Okay.
14-ish, I am in that rabbit hole. I'm reading.
And is it months, years? Like, how long did this go on for you?
It went till about 2017.
Wow.
To maybe early 2018.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
So 5-6 years.
Yeah.
That's years.
It was a special interest of mine. Like, I learned so much about the church. So much. And my heart would break as I would learn more and more about not only what a fiction it was, but that the church knew and that the church had known. When I found that out, that cut me to the core. Like, you've been lying. Like, you've known about this, And like, I trusted them, I gave up so much, I almost died on my mission, I gave up so much. I taught so much.
You gave 2 years of your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I almost died on that mission, gave up 2 years. And I felt betrayed, betrayal. You really want to kill someone, you betray them, right? And not only that, you do it willingly and you do it over and over and over again. And that's the part that killed me, that they kept doing it. I learned that people tried. People tried to make changes like, hey, you got this wrong. Can you fix it? Nah, we ain't fixing it, And that's how it works. And I learned, like, oh my God, this is systemic. This is systemic. This is not a one time. I could forgive a 1 time, a 2 time, a 10 time, right? Big institution. Like, no, this is how it works. Okay. This is par for the course. And I'm still in shock. I bounced between shock and grief, man, and I never cried so much in my life. You know, my heart is breaking time and time again. I love the church, John, you know, and I would have done anything for it. And when I found out that they lied to me and that they lied over and over and over again, it was almost too much, you know. But here's the thing, like, I needed to learn the truth. I need to know. Okay? So I did it for years.
During that time, did you change your, I don't know, your level of activity, or are you still going and just sort of holding as someone who doesn't like to hold, you know, the gray? Is that what you were trying to do during that time, or did you change your behavior in church?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking.
And also, was your wife sad about your questions?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I turned down a calling. You know, I did start to plant my feet or put my feet on the ground here. I'm like, you know what? I declined a calling, and I started to participate less. And people found out, oh, Paul, you know, he's found some things out. And I started to feel more self-conscious at church, okay? Because I knew that they knew. I was a pariah now. You know, I'm on the blacklist. So I did start to withdraw. I didn't stop attending, okay? And that was for my wife, okay? It meant a lot to her that I continued to attend and be active. John, that was really hard for me too. I felt like I was abandoning my wife, you know, because she, you know, I made a promise to her too. You know, like, we're doing this together. You know, I trust you, you trust me, we're doing it together. And I hated that I did that to her. I was pissed at the church that they put me in that position too. Like, you guys knew, you know. And later I found out, you know, I'm watching Mormon Stories. You know, like, I was casualty 10,000. You know, they know. They know. And they keep doing it. You know, I was pissed at the church for that. And I was really disappointed that I couldn't do what my wife wanted. You know, I let her down. I felt so bad.
Because the agreement when you got Temple married was that you'd be in it for eternity with her, right?
Yeah, you know, we're doing it together. You know, we're sealed in the temple. We're going to do this for the eternities. We're building worlds together, you know, after the resurrection, babe, you know, in it to win it. And here's the thing, like, I convinced her of it, you know. I killed it, dude, as a member. You know, I had incredible leadership with so few years under my belt, incredible trust, you know, super loyal and extremely knowledgeable. Okay. So I was a superstar, you know, and here I am like, oh my gosh, like, my family was right. They were right.
Your non-Mormon family was right.
My non-Mormon, they were right.
The church wasn't what you came to believe.
That's right, man. So here I am, Democrat, going to Republican. Now I'm switching back to Democrat. And that identity shift, it's hard. It was so hard to do. There's the conditioning, but there's the identity. Like, man, I'm laying down my wife. I'm laying down all these people who, you know, helped me on my mission. I don't know who paid for my mission, John. You know, people were so generous. Here I am, like, I'm letting them down. Letting them down. That killed me. I don't like to let people down. You know, it is a neurodivergent thing. You know, there's people pleasing. Sometimes it's pathological. So it hurt even more. You know, I hate this. And I was pissed, man. I was so upset. And 2018, I resigned.
Oh, wait. So you would have been going through this when the 2015 policy came out for LGBT people that basically made same-sex marriage an act of apostasy, said that children of LGBT people couldn't get married, couldn't get baptized or confirmed or even get the priesthood. And that if they got baptized, they had to do it when they were 18 and they had to denounce their parents' same-sex relationships. Did any of that hit you hard while you were questioning?
It did, John. It did. And when I heard that, I was shocked because I at that point I thought I had heard all the lows, you know, and then pow, you know, what a stab, you know, to the gay community and to their children. Like, you're getting the children involved in this case, making them pick.
Yeah.
You know, that's diabolical.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no way. I was disgusted by that. So, yeah, I was caught off guard. Like, man, I thought you guys were bad, but like, you guys can still fuck it up pretty bad.
Yeah. You're
You
like,
know?
this is like currently, you are currently bad.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
I
as
thought it was
opposed
kind of
to-
over. Like,
Yeah.
all right, you're damage control lying to the people. It's like, no, you're still fucking shit up bad.
Yeah.
And I guess you would have gone through your questioning phase when the church was issuing its gospel topics essays. CES letter would have come out, and Mormon Stories would have kind of been really picking up steam. So there's a lot of information that you had accessible.
It finally became accessible.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
But once I learned why, it's like, you know,
Yeah.
people are finding out about how dishonest you are.
Yeah.
You know, and it just spoke to its damage control efforts.
Yeah.
It's trying to protect its image, its brand. It's not about the truth.
Yeah. But what's hard is the church had genuinely sort of rescued you from a sad childhood and adolescence. It gave you meaning, it gave you purpose, it filled all these holes of identity and took away your self-loathing.
Yeah.
So it sounds almost like an abusive parent where you love your parent, they protected you and helped you, but they were also abusive. So like an abusive parent is the only metaphor I could think of for what you probably were experiencing once you discovered the church had misled you.
Yeah, absolutely, John. Yeah, abuse. I was so conflicted, and it made me, you know, start to think about things like that. You know, it was so cruel. How could something that had been so kind and so giving be so cruel? And again, like, that broke my brain. Black and white thinking, like, this doesn't happen. How do we do this? And
Also, you would have believed that the Holy Ghost had told you to join the church, right? Like God had told you to join the church, right?
no, absolutely. It was painful to think, John, to look back and think like maybe it wasn't the Holy Ghost. You know, what else could I be so wrong about? Because I knew it. I knew it was true. It shook my world. There were nights I would just pace back and forth, and my body would just burn trying to reconcile this. Okay, it really affected me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said you resigned in 2018. Is
Yeah.
that what you said?
So 2018, quitmormon.org. You know, like, you know what? It was too much. I forget what had happened. But I could no longer, in good conscience, be a member. You know, I did stop attending eventually. I couldn't do it. It was so hard to hear what I knew wasn't true and that it might lead other people to believe. And then, you know, 10 years later, after marriage and kids and all the callings and the mission, find out it wasn't true. Couldn't do it. So I stopped attending. And eventually I resigned. It's like, I can't do this. I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me really quickly, we're going to talk about someone who, you know, was abusive in your life, but just so I can get the timeline right.
Yeah.
When did you left the church in 2018. When did your marriage end again?
Marriage ended 2021.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So introducing, let's just say, a new character into this story, without naming names, there was somebody who entered into your life that kind of played an abusive role. And I think it's important for you to talk about that in a way where we're not going to try and call anyone out or identify them. But there was a person that entered your life who played an abusive role, and you end up making in your outline a parallel between experiencing abuse and then also starting to see the church as similar to an abusive partner.
Yeah.
So how do you want to address
Absolutely.
that part of
So,
the story?
You know, I was so conflicted. I was feeling like incredible emotions, and I needed answers to them. Like, what's going on inside of me? You know, how do emotions work? Like, what the hell is going on that I'm so upset about this? And I started to learn about abusive behavior, what it looks like. And it broke my brain. There is so much paradox and things that don't make sense with things abuse. When you're on the spectrum, it's difficult to detect abuse. You're just so trusting. You're so naive. You believe the words. You know, you could see a video. You're like, oh, that's AI. Wow, that's really good AI. You know?
So that comes into play particularly, are you saying, when you're trying to weigh your behavior that you're witnessing or how you're being treated with, let's say, what someone's saying to you? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out this experience. And two, I'm starting to think maybe I'm neurodivergent. Finally, at this point in my life, later, mid-2015s, late, I might be neurodivergent. You know, enter my mind, and I start learning about it. And then I realized, like, hey, Paul, unscrupulous behavior can be hard to detect for you. Okay? I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that. Okay? Hey, you know, people don't always say what they mean and mean what they say. It's like, I didn't know that. Okay? Hey, someone who says they love you can hurt you and hurt you bad. And then you do it over and again and not even love you. Like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Okay? It sounds so stupid, right? But I literally didn't know it. Okay? So when I experienced abusive behavior, okay, I think it's me. You know, I misunderstood something. You know, they got upset for a reason. I didn't even know. I didn't know it was abuse at first. I knew it hurt, you know, but I couldn't connect the dots. I'm still learning about feelings. They're so hard sometimes. It's hard to connect that event A led to feeling, you know, B or whatever. So I'm learning about neurodivergence. I'm learning about feelings. I'm learning about conditioning. I'm learning about black and white thinking, you know, and there's nuance. And people you're in a relationship who say they love you, they can love you actually, but they can also hurt you. You know, it can work that way. Yeah, that broke my brain. Like, I literally didn't know that. Okay? So I'm doing these exercises. Mindfulness. It changed my life. Noah Rasheta. Checked out his podcast. And I'm learning to just sit and pay attention to emotions, right? Give it a name. When was the last time you felt this way? Mm. You know, start basic. Is it good? Is it bad? You know, pay attention to your body. Are you crying? Are you tense? Okay, it's probably this. You know, did someone just pass? That's grief. You know, and you learn, you know, what emotions are in their role. How they can also be twisted, you know, and you can be corrupted with them. You know, with the church, John, I learned it corrupts how you feel about things. Okay. I think it was a recent podcast of yours. You said, I think Utah has some of the most depressed people in the world, right? But yet they say they're the happiest, right? I've seen people too, fast in testimony, crying, I'm so happy. And now I've learned about, you know, body language and emotions. I'm like, nah, I'm really happy. You know, she's going through a tough time. Okay. That's what abusive people do, John. Okay. They don't care about your feelings. What they care about is them. Your feelings get in the way. And they're going to do what it takes to corrupt it. They're going to convince you you're happy, you're doing the things when you're miserable. Okay. I was in one relationship towards the end of it. I was a shell of a human being. I was a shell. And I lost touch, you know, with my feelings, and I had to tap into them again. Right. And then I realized, like, Paul, like, you're miserable right now. You're miserable. You're unhappy. Here's how we can tell. Okay. It started about this point. They say these things. Does a person who loves you do these things? You know, I needed those kinds of questions. Right.
Can I ask you a question about the abuse itself as
Sure.
well that you're experiencing now later in life? Were there things that were similar to your childhood experience of abuse. I think sometimes unconsciously, of course,
Yeah.
What is laid, the foundation that's laid in childhood, even if cognitively we want to say, that wasn't okay. I'm not going to do that. I'm not never going to be in a position like that again, or that unconsciously it's what's familiar. And so very often we end up in situations later on where it may not be exactly the same, but maybe dynamics, or there are aspects that oftentimes, right, were laid earlier. They're familiar to us. Were there things in common? And if so, do you want to name just a couple of the things in common?
Yeah. I hope I understood the question, but fear.
Did any abuse or control in your childhood reappear as a pattern in the abusive relationship that you experienced later?
What were some of those things? I think
Yeah. So one is governing by fear. Okay, you govern by fear, but you've forgotten what fear even feels like. You think you're doing it because you love them. Okay. I had one exercise where I asked myself, imagine saying no to this person. Just a mental exercise. Just sit with yourself. Imagine they've asked you to do something. And in your mind's eye, say no to them and pay attention to how you feel. I did that with this person. And I realized it was terror. Like, it was terror. I had forgotten, what it was like. And when I realized how scared I was of this person, that scared me. It was hard to hide it.
Yeah.
My behavior changed a little bit about them. And that's, you have to be careful. Okay. I'm sorry, John.
You were scared of your dad, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's fear, Yeah.
So living in fear when you're in proximity and living with this, or being close with this person in any way, in relationship with them.
You fawn. That was how I dealt with it. I fawned. I'll give you whatever you want. You want me to do this? You got it. I thought I was being a good partner, right? But I was acting out of fear. Mm-hmm. Okay. Church, I'm sorry, it's the same thing. It is. Try saying no to your bishop. Pay attention to how you feel. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm. It's terror. Mm. It's terror. Yeah. I learned through the church, kind of kicked off the whole abusive relationship thing. They're real. They're out there. And there are unscrupulous people and institutions who they'll take advantage of you. They will. Unabashedly. They won't care. Yeah. Like, they literally don't care. Victims, we would love it if they cared. And if they apologized, that would mean so much to us. And it hurts to think like, no, they don't even care.
Right.
Going back to your analogy of being a narcissist, the church as an institution, not the members. Members, salt of the earth. I still believe that. But as an institution, dark triad. Psychopath, narcissistic, Machiavellian. Okay, they're brilliant with how they work. A recent podcast with the those small town churches, bullying them with lawyers, and if you hear them in front of the city council, they gaslight the shit out of those out of the council members. Yeah, we want to be good neighbors. Well, why don't you lower it by 100 foot? Oh, because we want to be good neighbors.
Oh, the steeple.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, the
temple.
steeple wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard the Kirkland one, and it was disgusting. I was disgusted by how the church rep talked to them. They talked to them like they were so stupid, and they were confused by the gaslighting. Like, hey, you're over here saying you're over here saying you want to be a good neighbor, but then you're squishing us with a lawsuit. Yeah, we just want to be good neighbors. And that's disgusting to me, because you're running over them. At that point, you're saying they're so stupid, what they say and how they feel doesn't even matter. Okay, super manipulative, psychopathic, like they don't care. They don't care how many people, are torn apart by the things they do. They'll just find another member. Mm-hmm. There's someone else in line. Paul Quiz, who cares?
Yeah.
We got someone else.
Yeah. Hearing you describe this, it makes me realize something pretty obvious that I never put together before. The members made you feel loved when you joined, but the church didn't really care about you at the end of the day. So there's a difference between feeling the love from the members, but then bumping up against the fact that the church could care less. You're just a number.
It's almost the institution,
church.
like you're
Yeah.
bumping up against the institutional side, the corporate side.
Absolutely. And that's why, if you leave the church, you can't bash the members. Like, I don't want to hear it. I see a lot of Reddit posts. Oh, yeah, sheep, this, that. Like, no, that's not cool. Okay. They're real people. They're there. A lot of them, they really care. They believe. Okay. And a lot of them are manipulated into it. Okay. They get caught in something and then they want to get out, but they can't. Church puts a gun to their head. There's so many stories where someone tries to leave. Hey, you leave. We're going to tell the congregation, about your past sins.
Or they're like facing such grave consequences, like they'll lose their marriage, they'll lose their family support, they'll lose, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So they give it to you to take it from you, to use it.
Yeah.
Okay? Big difference between the institution and the members. Members, again, people, salt of the earth. I was one of them. Like, I believed. I was there to do great things, So I feel bad. I feel bad for so many members, They get caught up in stuff. They can't get out. Then they get thrown under the bus.
So do you view members, like, just to draw the parallel now to this, so do you think of the members as victims like you would if they were in a narcissistic relationship
Absolutely.
with someone?
Absolutely. They got caught up in it.
I see.
Now, hopefully, I think most of them won't be in a situation where they have to, do what the spiritual mob wants. But they'll do it. If the church needs you and you're the person, you're going to get a call. Hey, we need you to talk to the city councilman. Hey, we need you to pass zoning over here, right?
Yeah.
If you don't do it, so many stories, they get in trouble. Like, that's not cool. They are absolutely the victims. A lot of people still get a lot from the church, right? I'm not going to say it's all terrible. It checked a lot of boxes for me when it did. And I can't be going around saying, like, it's terrible, burn it down. No way. There's just no way.
Yeah.
It's a relationship. There are times when that relationship, it works. And not only does it work, you're a better person for it. And those, you fight for them. Every relationship has its things. No such thing. And you can piss each other off. You work through it. But there comes a point where it's abusive, John. And that's where I learned, like, all right, there's a thing, there's such a thing as an abusive relationship. And you have to be on alert for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Especially if you're neurodivergent. Okay. We're 10 times more likely to be hurt and caught up in things. Okay. A lot of us suffer an unusual amount of PTSD. We pay the price because we're so vulnerable.
Yeah. Extra vulnerability.
Yeah.
And just to play out some of the characteristics, just because they're going through my head right now of kind of narcissism.
Can I read through them? Because he's got them in the outline.
Yeah, because I'm realizing a lot of them actually do fit.
Yeah, not to interrupt you, Margie, but I was just about to take him through. So in your outline, you've got a really, really good list. You wrote, breaking away from Mormon church is a lot like breaking away from an abusive partner. And then you've got a big list. So I'll read each one and you can make a comment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let's do it.
So the first thing you wrote is abusive partners are all about control, image, and protecting their fragile ego.
Absolutely, John. The church, ultimately, when all is said and done, is control. Okay, you do what we say. And if you even start to question, you're out. We're going to make you pay the price. Okay.
And I often say the two most sacred things in Mormonism are authority and image, public image. They want to control you because they want to control their public image and be viewed as good. So, like,
PR is powerful. A lot of abusive people, phenomenal PR.
Yeah.
And the church knows it. Okay. That's why they spend so much money on it. It's so powerful. It lets you get away with so much.
But with the church and abusive people, it's not about being good. It's about looking good.
It's about looking good.
Yeah.
And that's why if you want to piss off a narcissist, you want to piss off the church, make them look bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Make them look bad.
Even if they should look bad because they've done wrong.
Yeah. It's powerful. It's power,
Yeah.
They want options. They want to get away with things. Okay.
Yeah.
So image, they protect it. Behind closed doors, they're monsters.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. The second thing you have there is nothing is their fault.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like Oak said, we don't apologize. right?
And so lack of accountability.
Lack of accountability.
Everything is God said. Even polygamy, God commanded Joseph to practice polygamy. It
Yeah.
wasn't Joseph, it was God.
If
right?
it's your fault, you're accountable, right? You got to make a change.
Yeah,
But if it's never your fault, well, you never have to change.
because it's always God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What's the big deal? We didn't do it.
Yeah.
Why are you getting mad at us?
Yeah, God's ways are complicated. They're more sophisticated. We don't always understand God's
Right.
ways.
So pass the buck.
Yeah, yeah, but never take responsibility.
Yeah.
All right, the third thing you have is to leave them is an attack on their core.
Yeah.
Quote, how dare you leave me? I once learned from Thomas McConkie, he taught me the quote that that basically you can tell a cult because there's no credible way to leave a cult, right? You can't. A cult is any organization that won't let you leave
With your
dignity
Yeah.
intact, because there's no, for a cult or an abusive person, there's no credible reason to leave them. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And if you're a good person, why would you be leaving them?
Yeah.
It's it speaks to that maybe they weren't such a great person after all. Because why are you leaving them? You can't.
Yeah. Next one you have is they control your friends, your family,
Oh my God.
your identity, and then you have the quote, "Where will you go?" That sounds very. We know that's a quote from a general authority.
Yes.
But that sounds straight out of like an abusive Hollywood movie. If you leave me, where will you go? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. The idea is there literally is nowhere to go. You stay here. You're trying to remove any options that they have. Speaking to the friends.
You're nothing without me, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Classic abuse.
I made you.
It's you're worthless,
Yeah.
right? You're worthless. If you have no worth, you can't negotiate. You have no leverage,
Yeah.
right? And they're trying to remove all leverage. Friends, if you have friends, they might see the abuse, right? If you're friends with non-church members, they might point out that like, hey, doesn't that seem a little controlling to you? I was in one relationship, John, where I was strongly discouraged from having friends, okay? And I was isolated. And I had nowhere to go. I had nowhere to go. Like, where will I go, John? I don't have friends. Not only did I not have them, they were turned against me, okay? They controlled the narrative, okay? Again, autism, not great with social stuff. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's Paul. It has to be Paul. He's neurodivergent. He has ADHD. He probably deregulates, and they use that stuff against you. It's all about making you powerless, taking your voice, and it's a terrible feeling, and you don't want to feel that again, so you stay with them.
And it's not just friends. It can be your spouse and your kids that are held captive, correct?
Absolutely. Whatever is valuable to you, John, they know what it is. Could be your kids, right? Could be your job. Hey, I'm going to call them up, let them know about those 10 grand you threw our way. I'm going to let them know now. Right? So they're there to show you who's in charge.
Mm-hmm. And inadvertently, too, what that does by having you not have friends, by having you, is it reinforces them as center, as like the focus point, right?
Yeah, where will you go?
Yep.
Yeah. Next one you have is they control your identity.
That's right. You are nothing without them.
Yeah.
Right? You need them. Because without them, like, what are you?
Who are you? What are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not a devout Mormon, what are you?
Yeah.
Just some neurodiverse,
You're some kid with autism who has no friends. Someone told me like that. I was in a relationship one time. They said that. That killed me. And by that point, I was like, okay, I'm recognizing a pattern here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cruel, like just cruel stuff.
Yeah. And then you're dealing with loneliness to boot. You've lost your identity. You've lost your moral compass.
Yeah.
You've lost your conviction, your sense of meaning and purpose. And you risk losing your spouse, your kids, all your friends in your community. So you're combating loneliness on top of all the other things you've lost.
Yeah, and to throw in an ADHD component to that, it's a lot harder to work, to feel motivated, to get things done by yourself. Body doubling is a game changer.
That's right.
Okay?
Yep.
So, that thought, like, I'm going to be on my own. I'm not going to have any friends. I don't know where I'm going to live.
Yeah.
right? It was too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. It hurts less to stay in than to leave.
Got it.
Until it hurts too much to stay in,
Right.
then you leave.
Right. Exactly.
So a few other things you have fear of isolation after relationship is over, shame and guilt for failed relationship, being wrong about the church after having given so much. I guess you would wonder, if I could have been so wrong about the church, how do I trust my intuition? How do I trust my decision making? How do I trust what I thought was the Holy Ghost if all those things led me wrong? Is that right?
Shakes your world, man. Again, I had structure. I had it. I needed it. And now, not only do I not have structure, you have an autistic person without structure. Okay?
Yeah.
And then you have to rebuild from scratch, losing everything
Yeah, like
midlife.
it was hard. It was one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life, John. Leaving abusive relationships, leaving the church, okay? Because there's still safety in them. Yeah, they're abusive, but at least they're predictable. You know where you're going to go. You know what you're going to hear. You know what's next. You know, you got someone there, body double. Like, it helps you get things done, right? Until it hurts too much to stay in.
Yeah.
Well, they say that loneliness is more toxic than smoking and, alcoholism. So as toxic as a bad relationship or a bad church membership might be, it's very possible that loneliness could actually be worse, right? So you can't stay, but then you're lonely and it could be worse, right?
It's a function of survival.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's terrible is if you know you're in an abusive relationship and you don't get out, that kind of feeds into the shame. You're
Right.
weak, can't leave. It hurts. It hurts so much.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you have to start over from scratch because those relationships or that church controlled everything, and now you're starting over with nothing. How overwhelming is that?
And I'm realizing, much like the church, when for many people that faith journey, often with this relationship journey and coming to reality with that, it also makes you face this idea of like, who am I? Who am I then? Because you haven't actually developed, differentiated, a self in the meantime. So it leaves you in this place of just feeling a bit lost. Is that right?
Yeah, you feel so empty.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like I had it. I was unstoppable. I was unstoppable. I did great things when I was in the church.
Yeah.
A lot of my success is a result of the church. Down to being, a father. Okay? I take being a father super seriously. The church helped with that. It really did. It absolutely had its value.
And you found your wife through it, and you had your kids through it?
Beautiful kids,
right?
man. I got beautiful kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I add one that I think is important too to the list that I think is in common too? It's the idea that, I'll speak to narcissism, and I think people, a narcissistic person or someone with narcissistic traits would have this, and I think the church has this. There's one reality, and it's theirs, right? Their reality is the only true reality. Your feelings, they're not real. Only my feelings
Lack
and the
of
way I
empathy.
see this is the real way,
Lack
the
of
true
perspective taking, lack
It's
of
important.
empathy.
Yeah, well, if they had empathy, then they might actually think about how the other person is feeling. Yeah, your feelings don't matter in an abusive relationship. Your feelings don't matter in the church. The church never goes out of its way to say, hey, how will this affect the children? How will it affect the gay community? They never do that. It's never feelings.
No, yeah. Well, the last bull you have is shaking off Mormon teaching. So there's conditioning, though the wiring runs deep, right? It's hard to shake off.
Yeah, John, I remember that the first time I took off those Mormon chonies, man, the garments, and I put on,
What
whatever.
word are you saying there?
Chonies.
Chonies?
Yeah, like, underwear in Spanish, Mexican
okay.
Spanish.
Okay.
Man, I was trembling. And I look back now, that's ridiculous, right? But man, that was a big deal. Mm-hmm. Super symbolic, deeply symbolic. But I remember taking them off, here come, the the Calvin Klein boxers. And man, it was just real slow. Like, what's going to happen? You know, what's happening? What's happening? Boom. Like, all right, put them on. Let's do the pants. Let's walk out to the car. And it sounds ridiculous, but it is that kind of intensity. Like, what's going to happen? You're on eggshells.
Yeah.
That took a long time to shake off. There's a lot of guilt from the church as well. You know, a lot of guilt I had to shake off, that I didn't have to be a volunteer for everything, you know, that I could do things for myself. You know, that was a novel idea. We're taught sacrifice, church first, church first. You first? Oh, no. How could you? Church has done so much for you. You know, you gotta contribute. And the idea that, like, hey, maybe I could do something just for myself. You know, get that thing just to see how it tastes for me. You know, it took a while to feel shameless about just doing things for myself.
Right. Yes. Providing yourself with what you need, providing yourself with care you deserve.
That you deserve. Even the idea, you know, that like, you deserve this. You're going through a tough time. Reading the scriptures ain't going to help you. You know, you might have to try this other thing and doing it just for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you end up at the end of this wonderful list about how the Mormon Church, leaving the Mormon Church is like leaving an abusive relationship. You write, arguably one of the most difficult things I've done in your life. So it's almost like joining the church was one of the best things that ever happened to you. And then leaving the church was one of the most awful things that's ever happened to you. Like, how complicated is that?
Yeah, because it was so good to me, John. You know, I felt the Savior's love. I felt his love. I felt the Holy Ghost. I preached a gospel out there, you know. And then to leave it, oh, God, it's too much. It was too much. That's why it took so long, you know, for me to leave. But I had to do it. Once I found out what they had done and that they keep doing it, I'm out.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it.
Yeah. What would you say, you know, I think we've discussed a lot of the barriers, like what makes it difficult to leave, both an abusive relationship and also the Mormon Church who can serve as like a proxy for. I mean, what would you say has been on the other side of that, though, for you?
So having left and now Paul 2.0, so to speak.
Yeah.
Post-Mormon Paul. Yeah, it has been... Once I was able to shake off the conditioning, it's been open world.
Yeah.
Like, what's out there? And I started to just be curious.
Well, I mean, it's probably worth mentioning your marriage didn't survive, right?
The marriage did not last. The church certainly did not help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So part of your reconstruction is as a single man. I mean, I think that's important.
That's right. Yeah. Big change, being single.
Yeah.
Finally, really living the neurodivergent kind of identity. Like, all right, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is how I, interact with the world, and as I understand it.
And getting those diagnoses, ADHD and ASD diagnosis, was that helpful?
It was, John. It was. It was great for a professional to tell me, because then, like, confirmed, and now as I revisit so many past experiences, everything makes so much more sense.
Yeah, you have some self-knowledge, self-understanding.
In my case, it proved valuable. Some people, they just know they don't need the diagnosis, but I wanted it. For me, it was really important. I see a professional, we talk about it together, and then I get it.
Yeah, and that seems like it would be helpful with identity forming. Honestly, on the other side, that you're actually connecting with your own brain in a very informed way. Yeah,
it's great to know, why you do the things you do.
Yeah.
It speaks to mindfulness. Pause, take a break. What's going on here? And it helps you make better decisions. It helps you avoid risky situations. Now I know neurodivergent, I'm a little naive, right? And there are probably certain situations and people I should avoid, or I should have a loved one with me. There are things I have to admit. There's certain weaknesses. They're hard to admit, but better I know them than not, put myself in a dangerous situation. Yeah, it's helped me structure the way I work. Now that I know, like, hey, I need structure with novelty, it's changed the way I work.
Yeah.
ADHD too, time blindness, things like that. I'm far more visual now. I use a Kanban, for the office. In other words, you just have all your tasks visually on a board. And once you see it, it's real. Same with clocks. I have clocks all over the place because time. When you have ADHD, time, man, it's so hard. It slips through your fingers. And if you don't have a beep or a buzz or something to, remind you of how much time has passed, like you're going to be late for stuff.
Yeah.
You will. You'll be late. You're gonna miss your kiddos thing.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Wow.
That if you have it, you should know about it. Otherwise, it's hurting you, and it's probably hurting others around you.
So what I'm hearing kind of is that your experience of learning how your brain works has allowed you to create a more supportive environment for you to thrive, for you to kind of live the life that you want. Is that right?
Yeah, and it speaks to me like being kind to myself.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Paul, you need these things. It's okay. I was embarrassed at first. Hey, Paul, you can't. You're terrible all the time. You need these things, and it speaks to self-compassion. Like, hey, it's okay. It's not a big deal. Everyone has their things. You need some extra clocks. This needs to be visual for you, and it's led to far more productivity. More meaningful relationships, and sometimes just telling the other person, like, hey, I'm kind of on the spectrum here, and I might need some clarification. I might have some dumb questions, like, hey, I heard you say this, but then did you really mean this? Like, I can't tell. I'm surrendering a little bit. It's very disarming, and much better relationships.
More direct communication,
more direct
vulnerability.
Yeah, and sometimes I've learned too that, feelings are important. They're really important. They're a little hard for me still to kind of manage, understand. Sometimes I feel like they get in the way, like, hey, let's just do the thing already. But I've learned that, hey, feelings are really important, and we need to cater to the feelings of others. Even if you think it's, a lot of work, like, hey, people's feelings, they matter, okay? And we should take them into account, okay? It should be pretty close to the top of the list, okay? Before, not so much. It just wasn't a thing for me. It was not a natural thing for me.
In bringing up, I feel like we touched on loneliness, this fear of being lonely. I do think there's a very intense and unique loneliness that comes from being in relationship with someone who either exhibits narcissistic traits or is, identifiably a narcissist. Do you want to speak to your experience leaving, the church, leaving this relationship with loneliness, and maybe what has changed there, what surprised you, or?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is combating kind of the loneliness as you leave. Is that right? I learned to accept it's okay to feel lonely.
Yeah.
It's okay to be single.
Acceptance.
It's okay. It's not that big of a deal. It happens. And sometimes it needs to happen. You're better off being lonely sometimes than with that person.
Yes.
It depends.
100%.
Sometimes it's better to be lonely. Yeah. And I've learned to fight a lot of that. Like, it's okay. It's okay to feel lonely. Sometimes things don't work out.
Yes.
They just don't. It's not personal. And you'll just have to go out and meet new people. And I've learned that's something I love to do.
Yeah.
I was stuck in the church. You really only talk to other church members. And in these other relationships, like, you're not allowed to have friends. And being outside of these constraints, oh my God, I love meeting people.
Yeah.
Like networking, doing meetups, just different Facebook groups. One of my favorite things to do is walk up to someone, like at an event, and say, hey, I noticed you're part of this event. My name's Paul. I'd love to learn your story. Like, what's your story? And that catches so many people off guard, and they have to think about it. And I love hearing it. Mm-hmm. I love hearing it. Like, what's your story? And then they get to choose. They get to choose the narrative a little bit and control it. I love that.
Yeah.
And one of my goals is just meet as many people as possible. You learn so much, about yourself as you meet other people. It blows me away.
Wow.
Everyone's so unique, different backgrounds, history, and, autistic. But you know what? I love meeting people.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yes.
People blow me away.
Back to the loneliness for a minute. Like, I do think there's a bit of a cultural, I'll just speak for me. I do feel like culturally we talk about being alone. Like, if you're alone, you are necessarily lonely. And I just don't think that's true.
Good
I
point.
think being alone, you can be alone and not feel lonely. It can be really important, and particularly with trauma. And there's a question here, but with people who have experienced trauma, I think there can be a default to be in relationship to people because it stops you actually having this connection to yourself. Does that make sense? So sometimes being alone is really important for people who have been around abusive people for a lot of their lives because they've acted as a barrier to them actually having a relationship with themselves. It can be something that's a default setting, though, that you feel most comfortable in relationship to people, even abusive people, over being alone. But have you found that has been in stages important for you to actually recognize that being alone, you don't have to feel lonely, and actually it might be healing for you to actually consider your relationship with yourself as primary?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, there came a point where I saw, and I see it now, incredible value in being, quote, alone. Yeah. Because now no one makes fun of the coats I put on. I can go shopping. Like, I love fashion. I have a few special interests, and no one gets in the way of them, baby,
Oh, self-expression.
Yeah.
I love that.
Self-expression. Radical self-expression is one of my things.
I wish people could see your shoes and socks. Maybe you can lift them up. I don't know.
Honestly, can you see?
A little higher.
Oh, they're so great.
That's out of focus.
And how about your tie? Because I feel like your tie has been behind the microphone.
Oh, is that right?
But can we just appreciate for a moment?
Dapper Paul. Dapper Paul.
I don't know. Love it. Oh, fashion. I love it. It's so much fun to just be yourself.
Yeah.
Learn about who you are. You have no one breathing down your neck. Hey, how much is that going to cost? Hey, and stopping you, from learning about yourself, who you are, and just being yourself.
Yeah.
I have learned. I love it. I love being myself. Love being ridiculous.
Humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love ridiculous outfits. Did the Burning Man thing. And it's all about being ridiculous, unabashedly.
Tell people what Burning Man is.
Yeah. Burning Man. Burning Man is it's a yearly community event. It's out in the desert. It's about 2 weeks.
Arizona, right? Or Nevada?
Nevada.
Okay.
Nevada, out in Black Rock City. About 70,000 people show up, and they all build camps. It's a city. And one of its prevailing principles is that of radical self-expression, right? There's default worlds, which is, us here, so to speak. And then there's home, which is Burning Man. And out there, it's all about you being you. You do you. And I did me, man. It was so much fun to feel like no pressure. If you want to dress up like a caveman one day, wear the bone necklace, carry the bone around, act like Fred Flintstone, go for it. People are going to love you for it. If you want to dress up as a missionary from the waist up and then not so much from the waist down and preach a gospel, go for it. It's all about silly and fun. In the arts, you get in touch with your feelings. There's a reason why dictatorships, they shut down the arts. It's about feeling, hey, how do you feel? You look at this, does it inspire you to do anything? In this mindfulness, you sit, right? What do you see in this? Wow, what a different perspective. There's more than one. Thanks for sharing. And it's that invitation to be mindful, to be silly. And I loved it. There's debauchery, out there. It's kind of known for it. But, pretty good kid. And I stayed away from it. Pretty good kid. And I was curious, most of it, just being ridiculous. Yeah. It was so much fun to just be out there and be myself.
Yes. Mm.
And if you think about all the ways the church brought you joy when you joined relative to your upbringing, and then you think about everything you lost when you left the church, do you feel like you found a more fulfilled or a happier place than when you were a Mormon? And specifically when you were a happy, zealous Mormon? Because all the cult documentaries, one thing I've noticed about all the cult documentaries, Going Clear, Wild Wild Country, Holy Hell, like all these cult documentaries, these people will talk all day long about all the abuses they experienced in the cult, and then they'll say, but I was never happier. Do you feel like you've been able to replace the things the Mormon Church gave you and find a sense of fulfillment or purpose or even joy
or authenticity
relative to, when you were a member?
Difficult question. Yeah. If I had to say when I was 100% all in, that might have been the happiest I was. But here's the thing, that was then. People change. They grow up.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's the problem. And there's nuance, right? So at that point, I got exactly what I needed. I did. Checked all the boxes. Unstoppable. But then that same thing, later, not so much.
It becomes toxic.
It does. It becomes toxic. The relationship changed. Okay? I grew up. Church started to change. And there comes a point, there's friction. You have to think about it. All right. What does this church mean to me? What does this person mean to me? And it's a struggle, right? A lot of members are there, right? They have their, they're upset with things, but they don't always leave. It still brings value to them. Ultimately with me, what I learned was when it works for me, when it doesn't, and when it's time to leave.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing I took away from it. It helped me grow.
Yeah. Like when you say that, it was one of the most difficult things that you've done, I think oftentimes we look at things like that and we just feel, oof, right? Like, which we should. But I think oftentimes when we have that fear of the difficult thing, what we don't get to see is who we become or who we are after we've done the difficult thing. And I'm just looking at you and I'm thinking about your story and I'm thinking literally how you were born into this world, what you had, what resources and relationships you had on your table, and how many difficult things you have navigated. Do you feel for that? Do you have this sense of like who you've become as someone who has lived through so many difficult things?
Absolutely, Margie. Yeah, I've gone through some really tough shit, recently. And all those things I've overcome, they taught me like, no, Paul, you can do it. Like, you can do it. Tough, difficult. But it's like, no, Paul, like, you're a badass, dude. Like, you did the church thing. You did the mission thing. Other difficult things, unfortunately, I can't share, but I did it.
Yeah.
Maybe by the skin of my teeth, but it was hard, and I did it.
Yeah.
I do grieve. I'm still grieving that, that the things happened, that it was so painful. There's still some grief, you can see it. You see my, body language and the tears. But it's made me who I am today, baby,
Yeah.
This is Paul you're getting. And he's this way because of these things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Grief, I think, is a big, big thing that we don't talk a lot about. When you mention grief, what does grief look like for you?
Oh my God, thank you. Yeah, grief is an emotion I have learned to love. Okay, because grieving is your body working through all that pain. Okay, you need to grieve. You need to go to that funeral. You need to look in that casket.
Yeah.
Okay, can't pretend. Can't pretend. The sooner you cry through it, bury it, you can move on.
Yeah.
But it's tough, Margie. It's really hard.
Yeah. Do you have particular grief practices that help you to process and to clearly, crying can be that, but like listening to music or I don't know what but to help you actually process grief?
Oh my gosh, thank you for asking that. It's music. Music has changed my life, and my neurodivergence plays a key role in that. With sound, so sensory issues, right? Maybe I didn't talk about that. Sensory issues are a thing when you're on the spectrum. And touch can really hurt sometimes. Sounds can really hurt, but they can also be so pleasant. When I listen to music, I hear all the synths. I hear the bass. I hear all the frequencies. I hear the layers as they come in and out, and it's such a moving experience. And it puts me in the zone.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful, In our bodies, they need it. If you're on the spectrum, it's hard. It's hard to process. It's hard to tap into the emotions. We just got to find a way, And for me, it's music. Maybe it'll be something else later.
Yeah.
But it's been a game changer, And just processing. It can hurt the body. It keeps a score. And crying for me, it's been a game changer.
Can
It
release
has.
it.
Yeah, and sobbing, like some of the most intense sobbing I've had in my life, where neighbors, they hear it, they hear it. But sometimes you have to do it. It's our bodies. It's something that our bodies need, and we need to take care of them.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you want to talk just briefly about dating at all? You did mention in your
Dating.
outline. You don't have to if you don't want to.
Absolutely. Dating. I really dated, before. I was in a relationship in high school. Got married, right after the mission. Dating has been so much fun. I approach dating with a spirit of curiosity. Something happens, great. If it doesn't happen, not a big deal. Go in with the intent to meet great people and have great conversation. And that has made dating so much more pleasant and fun. Hopefully, at worst, a friend, or maybe dating can hurt, not gonna lie. Don't call back, don't text back, but expect it. They're called relationships. They're so great for a reason because they can really hurt, but it's definitely worth the risk. I mitigate some of the pain by just, lowering the expectations a little bit. And it's just about meeting another incredible human being. Yeah. I did end up meeting someone, with that kind of mindset. It was a great relationship. Lasted about a year, but it was hardly a waste. We were both in it. It's a journey. And in this case, that journey for a year made sense. It was such a great relationship. Like, I have no regrets. We learned so much about each other during that. It was great. We were bummed. It didn't work out. Like, we tried. We tried to make it work out. And we couldn't meet each other's needs. So again, like relationships, one at a time, there came a point where we could not meet each other's needs, and we were not going to be able to, at least not now.
Yeah.
Okay. And we parted ways. It was hardly contentious. No one's calling their friends and saying what a bad person they were. No way. Yeah. So dating's been fun. Yeah. I'd love to meet someone, but I've met so many great people along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You talk about wanting to meet someone. You got married really quickly after your mission. As you've dated, is there anything you've discovered about yourself through dating that you want to share on the podcast? Or?
Discovered about myself?
Yeah.
Oh, that's in the outline maybe?
Yeah.
Oh, I approached a beginner's mind with dating. I'm just starting over. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to pay attention to how I feel. And I'm going to date dudes for a bit, see what happens.
Curiosity.
Yeah, it's just like, let's just see how I feel.
Dating men.
Yeah, dating men.
Yeah.
Let's just try it. See how I feel, right? Just try to, mindfulness, how are you feeling? I went on a date with this guy, and I'm paying attention to how I feel, right? And I'm like, feeling the heart flutters. And I'm like, man, this guy's cute. I felt this way before. And like, I'm kind of attracted to this guy, and it's been fun, just being curious, being mindful, trying new things. Sometimes, things go your way. Sometimes they don't. Like, who cares? It's a journey.
Right.
It's a journey.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not trying to out you, but like, if there's a cute guy out there watching, you probably want them to know.
I can't solicit. But yeah, dude, there's just so much. I thought I knew.
Yes.
My feelings were so muted, so much fawning, and just listening to your voice, like pay attention to how you feel, really how you feel. Don't lie to yourself. Don't do it.
That's right.
And mind blown. And I'm really, truth be told, I'm looking forward to so much else. I feel like there's so much yet to discover, so much uncharted territory. So super hopeful. Yeah, it was a bummer to leave the church, but, I'm in a new phase of my life. And, the fields are white, ready to harvest. I'm ready. I'm ready to see what else is out there.
The world is new.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you one last question, just because this was a major theme in our conversation today. Are there things now, let me just say this, as you're getting to know people, as you're approaching relationship currently, are there things you're more aware of when it comes to toxic traits, or do you ever find that you can still be drawn into certain types of personalities, or the opposite, that now you can red flag someone pretty quickly? Do you want to answer that?
Absolutely, Marty. Yeah, I again, I'm looking for meaningful relationships, either friendship or romantic, and there are certain values I have, like they need to have them. Or if there's certain values they have, like it's not going to work out. One thing I pay attention to is if I'm dating a single parent, how do they treat their kids, right? How do they talk about their ex? How do they talk about the breakup? How do they talk about navigating difficult relationships, right?
Yes.
Is everyone else always the problem? I was on a date with someone, and the way they treated their dog, I'm like, red flag. That don't work for me. We can be friends.
Right.
Want to do the dog park thing, do it, but don't expect anything more than that.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I'm paying attention to these things now. I have to train myself for it a little bit.
Yeah.
But dating in general, meeting people, you pay attention to how you feel when you see things.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yep. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, and the last question I have is, let's just say there's this cinematic moment where somebody else, is thinking about the church not working out for them, or an abusive relationship not working out for them.
Yeah.
And they're asked the rhetorical question, where will you go by the abusive church or partner? What would your response be?
Where did you go?
Now that you're looking back, what would your response be to the question of where will you go if you leave?
Yes,
so I'm speaking to the abusive person?
To the church or to the abusive person. Where will you go without
where will I go
me?
is literally anywhere. Literally anywhere.
Yes.
Because that power, unfortunately, we're conditioned. We actually give it to them. We give it to them. Yeah. So just speaking to like kind of domestic violence, you have to be strategic about things like that. You do. Okay. But most, everyday relationships, if it's not a serious one and things, you could go anywhere. You could break up with that person, cry your tears, everything will be just fine.
Yeah.
And life without the church, even when the church meant everything to you, life without the church can be what?
Life without the church, it can be incredible. I'm glad it's out of the way in a lot of ways. It really suffocated me. There was a point where it just didn't work.
Yeah.
It didn't work. So I don't want to say, it didn't have its value. It did, John. It did. It's what I needed. If someone tells me, hey, should I go or should I stay? When I say it depends, I'm going to tell you should go or stay. But I'm glad I'm out. Okay. Same with abusive people I'm with. Sure it had its value, but I'm glad I'm out.
Right.
Beautiful. All right. Well, Paul Martinez, if people want to reach out to you, how do people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I work as an architect. If you need an architect, I'm at martinez.design. I also do BIM, building information modeling. It's like a 3D kind of construction architectural tool. I have a ridiculous YouTube channel where I just kind of rag on Autodesk. And you can check out the channel, go to the website, and reach out, professionally, or with Things Church or anything we might have talked about. I just love to help. It's so much fun to be provide a meaningful friendship and advice to other people.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. All right. Well, Paul Martinez, thank you so much for joining us today on Mormon Stories.
It has been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much.
And Margie, thanks for being my co-host.
Yes, we are so grateful to have met you, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. And just really quickly, thanks for joining us on Mormon Stories. We couldn't do it without our donors. So thanks to everyone who's a monthly donor or an annual donor. Your donations make all of this possible. We lose donors every month, 10 or 20 donors a month, sometimes more. And if we don't replace them, we have to kind of start cutting services. So if you're not a donor and you value what we do, please go to mormonstories.org, click on the donate button, become a monthly donor. That's how we stay in business. You can also support us by subscribing on YouTube to this channel, subscribing on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok for as long as it's in existence and on Facebook. Sharing this episode, commenting on it, liking it, all those things really help. And then we always love your feedback. You can email us at mormonstories@gmail.com or comment on the episode. We read every comment, both Margie and I do. And then also we love, to have people apply to be on Mormon Stories. Of course, we can only accept a fraction of those who apply for lots of different reasons. But just like Paul, go to mormonstories.org, click on the apply button, and go through the application process. And who knows, you may make it through. Right, Paul?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
And then finally, we're super grateful to Brooklyn and Julia and Maven and Gerardo and Margie and Nemo and all the people on the Open Stories Foundation board that make everything possible. Couldn't do it without them. So thanks again for joining us today. Thanks again, Paul. Thanks again, Margie. Thanks to everyone who views or listens on the live stream. And be good to each other. Be kind to each other. We'll see you all again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Take care, everybody.